Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Americ Health is a premium telehealth platform specializing in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. Are you looking to optimize your health in and out of the gym, improve recovery, sex drive, and quality of life? Have you tried speaking to your health professional about this and have gotten the cold shoulder, stereotyped, or just told it's part of getting older? You just go to americhealth.com/table talk, and you can create your own lab, or you can take labs that we've had set up for them, which are based upon the same labs that I've been doing over the last 15 years. Or you can use their guided optimization. With this, they'll put you in touch with a patient care coordinator, which is actually pretty cool because you get to sit down and speak to somebody that can understand what you're looking for from hormone optimization and the preventative medicine standpoint. After that conversation, they'll determine which labs that you should and which tests you should have done, and then from there, get the labs done. They'll review those labs with you and put you in touch with one of their hormone optimization specialists that can determine which supplementation that you should use over the counter or prescription. americhealth.com/table talk. The discount code is table talk. What's going on, guys? We are back with another episode of Table Talk. Real quick, before we get started today, I want to thank our current crew members. Since we started putting ads about the Table Talk crew, we've actually started gaining a lot more members. So I want to thank the new members that have come on. When you join the crew, the link is in the description. It actually says join the crew. You just click on that. When you join the crew, you get extra episodes of the podcast, which are me. It's an AMA that the questions come through the Discord server that we have set up for crew members. On the Discord server, there's something like 20 or 30 free ebooks right now. There's one bonus crew cast, which if you guys follow the podcast, was last week or the week before was the first one. All the preceding crew casts will be just for crew members only. Also on the Discord server is an active community, the Q&A, form checks for all exercises, an exercise index, training logs, training programs, all the seminars that we've done in the past, the lectures, training series, courses, programs, all that is part of the Discord server as well. And discount codes and product giveaways. We did our first one last week, so there were 2 winners for that. So I will appreciate the support. Join the crew, hit the link in the description. And that's that. So today my guest is Travis Rogers for the 174th. 174th because he asked beforehand and I don't pay that much attention to that. Travis is a gym owner out of Maryland. Teacher and a top 10 198 lifter in sleeves, wraps, single ply.
Not single ply because it hasn't been full power.
Okay, so it has been full power. It's weird when you try to come up with introductions with people because there's a lot of things that we can talk about. Before we start getting into all that, I want to personally thank you for a couple things. The one thing is the articles that you've submitted to Elite FTS over the last few years. You're a hell of a writer. Right. So, and through some of the, I lose the word loosely, like research, like through listening to podcasts and shit like that, that you have an educational background in writing. Where just a story that people may not know, actually they won't know, is some of your articles were they were all like too good when they came in. They're too story oriented, especially some of the ones dealing with your past and with addiction and some of the other things that you were writing about, that we had to pivot it a little bit to fit it into the reader. But part of that was they didn't know you either. So when you're coming out with a really good written story that has a strong takeaway like that, and the readers don't know who you are, I don't know if the takeaway hits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of the things actually me and Sheena had kind of talked about. Like, I'd work and I'm like, man, I get other people to check this article out, and they're like, it's really detailed, it's extremely well written, like I can literally see the things you're talking about.
Yeah.
But then when I would talk to Sheena, it would be like, I'm not sure if this is going to actually like register with our readers in this particular sense. So that's when I started kind of alternating like story, more like takeaway, anyone can read it, you know, like general audience versus like a little more in depth.
Yeah. And now that people know who you are, though, those would resonate, because when you're dealing with story type articles, like some of the first original, I think it was the first original one you sent, because it's all the outside submissions. If she's not sure, well, like, come to me. Then I'm like, man, this is really fucking good. But then I'm looking at past ones that we've had before dealing with the same topic, and like, fuck, but they didn't do well. And it sucks when you have really, when I say do well, I don't mean not good. I mean, as far as the number of people who are reading, sharing, and, you know, liking it, putting it through. It sucks when you know so much time goes into something, but then the actual number of times somebody's going to read it is not a lot. Like, say under 100, like not a lot. And it's like, this sucks, you know? And when it's, now that your name's more well known, those would, because it'd be more well received, if that makes sense. But the other articles they're all good. I mean, they're all really good, which is, I want to thank you for that. And the other thing is, you spoke about it a little bit before we got on the podcast. It was 2019, I believe, was when you competed in Maggie's Nationals.
Ohio Nationals,
yeah. I don't remember a whole lot about your lifts at the time. I don't any of that. You know, what impressed me with you, and I think I even told you at the time, was your humility, your professionalism, and how you carried yourself, which is something that, especially at big lifts or big meets like that, normally isn't common, right? And it seemed to me like you understood that there are other people there that could be watching you and looking at you, and you wanted to provide a good example. Because I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, because you were lifting in it, like your deadlift was not going the way you wanted it to go.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that's I think that's the most I've still pulled ever in a meet. So it did go well. But I think one of the biggest things too was, at the time, like, you and I hadn't met, and it just was by chance that you were sitting right behind me and Jess while I'd strained one of my glutes, so I was struggling to put deadlift socks on. I could see you like smiling a couple times, like watching me struggle to get my sock on.
That's what it was. Okay.
But I had pulled out Equiblock, the horse liniment, and I had turned and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go in the bathroom, or I'm putting this on the cheek, get out there, you know, whatever happens, happens. And the first interaction I had with you was, you looked at me and said, hey, is that Equiblock? And I was like, yeah. And you're like, don't get that on your dick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't get it on your dick.
And that always stuck with me. And then lo and behold, like 2 or 3 days after the meet, we had gotten pictures back from our friend Angela, and it was a black and white photograph of like me struggling with the sock, Jess on the other side, and you behind, like one row behind us looking. And I sent you that photo. And that's actually when you told me that. You said, I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. I was the guy you told, don't get that on your dick. Yeah. And then you said, one of the things you noticed about me for that day was my willingness to help other people.
Yes.
And that's what stuck with you.
Yes, it did. And because it's not as common as what people would think it is.
Right.
And that's one of the things I notice when, especially at meets. I kind of want to be there, right? I don't like going to meets the same way most people don't like going to meets. I spent 20 years competing in them. The last thing I want to do is fucking go to the meet. And but I was there, and that's what I ended up. And it's not often that I remember people afterwards for that, you know. So that stood out. So, and that was 4 years ago. And then your online presence is kind of the same thing. You know, it's building upon what I saw, you know, in a very positive way, that the sport, not just the sport, because the sport's more than what people think it is, which we'll talk about as we kind of move through here, but it's important for the sport for that to be able to be seen, because it resonates with those that aren't top lifters. You know, sometimes top lifters forget that there's other people that aren't top lifters.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a big thing with that. When going through your timeline, you started a little late, right? So you started powerlifting 7 years ago in 2016.
Yeah, my first competition was 2015, 2016. But I started lifting probably about, I was 22. So I've been in the sport for like 10 years, but competitively since like 2016.
Yeah, and it was through your addiction that you found the sport.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So not to get in a deep rabbit hole about that, because you've spoke about this a ton of times. The question that I had listening to the story that you've told before is, why that? I mean, you grew up on a farm, your sporting background's like track and field. You would think it would be more of a running, or something. How did it end up being weight training or powerlifting?
So for a while, I was actually still running at the time. Even when me and Jess met, I was still getting up and doing like 2-3 mile runs around like the Salisbury downtown, probably 3 or 4 mornings a week. So I was still averaging probably 12 to 15 miles per week. And of course, like tracking it in like, a generalized MyFitnessPal type thing, not steps wise, but mile times and things like that. Cause I still like to compete with myself, even with running. So I like to measure out my distances and times. But I got to a point where when I was weight training at the same time, I noticed, I was like, man, I just, no amount of it, even though I liked running, I liked starting to train weights, the food, like it wasn't enough. Like I just couldn't keep weight on, not the way I wanted to, right? Especially coming back from that like addiction standpoint in that background, looking at like, 125 pound skeleton versus like, I added a few pounds. I was like 140, 150. I was like, man, I could keep this going, but not at the rate of like running 3 miles a day, going and lifting, and then still learning how to really feed my body in a surplus. So eventually I was like, man, I got to kick something to the curb if I want to get bigger and stronger. And so started running less, started gaining weight. I'm like, this might be the ticket. And so that's why I stuck with that one. I define
meathead is a good thing. Like not a bad thing,
it's not
right?
an insult.
Yeah, so it's I just to put that out there as we continue the conversation is. And it also is, it's not your recreational lifter either. There's a certain point to where you go from being the recreational lifter, wanting to get bigger, wanting to get stronger, to actually turning into a meathead, right?
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that?
So I've spoke briefly on this, but it's a story I really enjoy sharing. So I started working out with a guy named Zachary Rector. He's not alive anymore, so it's cool. I definitely want to at least say his name on here. That meant something a lot to me. But Zach was huge. He came from like an all military boys school, big dude. I'm talking like probably like 6'3", 275, which is a big boy. Walk in there, start warming up with 3 plates, like, he's just a hoss. And I was tiny. I was $130. And we had become friends when I was, working part-time for like GNC, like just something basic near the college. I had a bunch of part-time jobs when I was getting my bachelor's degree, trying to make ends meet and just, make it in college. And he told me, he was like, hey, we're good friends. I know you like coming to the gym. Why don't you start coming with me? So we started going to this public gym. It was a decent one. They had like sweat classes and all that kind of stuff, but they had quite a decent amount of like strength training equipment. And he said, 3 times your size, literally, like pretty much 3 times my size. Why don't you do 1/3 of my weight? And I know people, when they listen to this, they want to hear some like epic story or background or some like secret program you and me are going to discuss out loud that had all these things. But like, I think the stories like this are what really resonate with people, where it just shows, someone else taking a chance on somebody and like saying, hey, just follow me and see what happens. And so I took that chance. And so Zach said, I'm 3 times your size, do 1/3 my weight. And I was like, all right, so if you're doing 90s, I'm doing 30s. And we kept the same rep schemes, just the third weights. And we did that for a while. And then eventually he's like, all right, dude, you've added like, a little bit of body mass. Why don't you go half my weight? And so we did this for a really long time. It was literally that simple.
Well, this is actually some of the most intelligent programming.
Right. And it just sounds so simple when you talk about it. And people were like, wait, really, that was it? And I'm like, yeah, that was it. I followed this giant man around the gym and just did thirds, halves, and then I made it to like 3/4, and I was probably like $150. And a couple of his like bigger gym buddies, his other meathead friends, were like, yo, that short guy that's with you, like, he's really strong for his size. And Zach was like, yeah, I think I'm going to talk to him about powerlifting. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, you should, give it a try. Like, you squat deep, like, you shouldn't have any issues. And then I started checking things out, and like 6 months later, I signed up for my first meet.
And how did that go?
It was humbling. I did very well, but it was still very humbling for me personally. So, like, of course, I think a lot of people, when they do their first meet, have those expectations for themselves, like, especially since you don't have another meet to compare it to, and you're just starting the sport. You don't really have, I didn't really follow powerlifters and stuff when I started. Like, I wasn't like, typing in 198, ooh, John Hack at 181, 198, and like having numbers to be like, those are astronomical. So you really have just more expectations for yourself. And like, I wanted, a upper four squat, whatever bench. And I think my first meet, I weighed like 175, so light in the 181 class, and did like 1303 or 1308, something like that, which, I mean, in a local regional meet is pretty good. I mean, for your very first time in sleeves. Won first place. I was super stoked on it. But I mean, of course, that gave me the want and drive to keep competing. But now it was like, okay, now I want to follow people. Now I want to see what numbers are actually like competitively like in those weight classes. And then, I kind of took that back to Zach. He was like, yeah, man, let's just keep training. Let's get you bigger. Let's have you lifting weights like I would lift. Yeah. And then we just kept going.
With, I'm going to go down a side road here. With a first meet, because you have a gym, so you have lifters that are in the gym, right? And then you also do mentoring programming. I'm not going to say coaching, because I've listened to you explain. Actually, no,
I actually call it coaching now. Right, so I mean,
okay. So we'll talk about the difference about that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But with the first meet question, the one thing over the past year, speaking to other people and younger lifters as well, is myself, I've dismissed this way too often. Like, how should I train for my first meet? And the default answer is, dude, just go. Just do it. But I don't think that's the right answer, because so I'm going to throw it to you. Like, what do you tell? Now, the lifter's not part of your crew, right? So this is somebody that you're helping online, right? So they're going to do their first meet. What are you advising them? Because I get where I'm coming from, because I said it for so long. Just go, it'll be fine. Just get your feet wet. Yeah. But if I was to flip it and say I was going to go compete in a shooting tournament or something that I suck at, that I like, I still suck. I'm not good. I would want more than just go.
Yeah, like if you had like an archery coach and you sucked at shooting a bow and arrow, you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, just go. You'll hit the target. You'll be fine. Like, you would want more direction than that. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'd want more context. Right. So what are you telling the lifters? Because you're in that situation.
I think it's definitely like a dual edge question, just because I part of me totally agrees with you, and something I would say too, just because you have so many newer lifters that would say, because of the influence of like social media, because of the avenue of like YouTube and the ability to see all these extremely talented lifters, they don't correlate necessarily with years training experience. They just say, weight class, this is the weight they're hitting, how do I get to that weight? Not correlation, this guy's been going for 10 years, right? Like, I just started. They don't make that connection. Or if they do, they don't choose to see it. So I think it's really hard to tell a lifter, I would never say you need, this kind of squat, this kind of bench, this kind of deadlift to go do your first competition.
Yeah, I agree there.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's about considering standards and what they're going to be comfortable with. Because, I mean, it's very easy to say, like, go get your feet wet for the first time. It's all about experience. It's no matter how hard you train, you're going to fuck up a commands the first time. You're going to walk out a squat. You're going to rack something early. Like, you're going to fuck it up. Yeah. So just go get your feet wet. Because you could squat the weight we were really after, but like, if without that competition experience, you might not go 9 for 9. You might still not get that lift because of a technicality. Yeah. So part of me wants to say that, just go. And of course, the other part of that is, if somebody's, hey, I want to hit this weight before I sign up, or I want to be this strong. And this is probably more common what I deal with. Mm-hmm. You're going to be waiting forever.
Oh, yes.
Everyone wants to say, well, I want to do it, but only when I'm competitive. Well, competition rises every day. You're going to be, you're going to fucking die before you compete. They're not going to chisel 3 white lights on your coffin. Like, you need to, again, jump and go do it. But at the same time, I see what you're saying. So I think my thing is a looser approach to programming. And I would definitely say if you were going to do it, as far as coaching someone for the first meet, because I've had a couple, I've coached their first times online. Obviously I would prefer to do it in person, because I think especially with percentages, it's extremely hard to do because they don't have a lot to gauge on. Mm-hmm. And with RPE, it becomes extremely difficult because if you just started with a coach, like, their perceivement of what you can and can't do isn't quite on par with you yet. Like, I'm one of those kind of guys that, like, especially when I was competing like raw with reps, I'd shit my pants on the first rep, and they're like, dude, that was a fucking RPE 11, and then I do 2 more. And people are like, what the fuck? And it was like, from a coach's standpoint, like, how could you objectively look at me and say, this is what that was, versus what I knew I could grind out? So I think RPE always has that problem, especially with new lifters, because you don't have that connection with that coach enough for them to help guide you through it. So I think both ways, RPE or percentage based, even in person or not in person, it's still a hard call to make. But I think some sort of structured program is probably the best avenue to take. Mm-hmm. And it sucks because most of them are young. So, like, you're not out here trying to charge an arm and a leg. Like, you're not trying to break the bank on the kid who just got out of high school and wants to do his first meet. Me and my history teacher, Joe Pauline, we took handful of boys, with Jess being the other chaperone on duty, and we'd take them to USPA and RPS meets. RPS because, of course, we could save on membership fees, and 15-year-old kids are fucking expensive. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of those were one-on-one. And we did structured programs together. So I think my personal answer to that question would be modeling it for your kids, right? Modeling it for your newer lifter, right? Invite them on a couple training sessions with you if that's a possibility. Yeah. Show them what it's like to compare things as far as, like, what a progression looks like, what this is supposed to look like. Go through the commands with them. Don't just shoot them a fucking YouTube video and say, you're going to be good. Because it hardly ever works out that way. No, and it's some of the things that I've said to those that will, because the biggest thing that you said out of all that, and anybody watching that's answered the same question we have, if they compete, they're not strong enough yet. So I'll answer that question with a question, like, well, what do you think is strong enough? Like, top 50%, top 75%, what's strong enough to compete? Normally they'll say, I don't know, man, or I'll flip it and say, is being in the top half, is that good? Would that be enough? And a lot of times they'll say, well, yeah. And then I'll go look it up, and they most likely already are. Right. Because you look at the depth of a lot of the weight classes, right? And then if they're a teen, you can filter, then filter it down. Yeah, you can take the open powerlifting shuffle and shuffle it down to your number 1. Yeah, well, exactly. And it's like, well, look, man, you're actually in the top 40%, and so you're already there. With the other ones, I think it's, if I was to give them a checklist, just to have some type of program, like you said, that to lead into it, and if they don't know, just there's a billion free programs online. Yeah, exactly. Just reduce the percentages by maybe 10-15% to make sure it's easy. Find a video, and I've never made one, maybe, I don't know, on the basic rules. Like, reading the rule book's gonna mind fuck anybody. Yeah. Right. So find somebody that's going to condense the basic rules. So I just come through the WRPF one for making a new referee exam. So I would definitely see that as a challenge for a new lifter as well. It really is. But it's not. You see what I'm saying? As a lifter, it's really not. No. And then, go to the meet, and anything that you fuck up, and you will, ask
ask the referee why it was red lighted.
Yeah, and I'd love to just a quick segue on that, just because this is something me and my wife talk about all the time. As you know, we were USPA national referees, and now we're higher up in the WRPF once we switch feds. But like one of the biggest things I never understand, because I've done countless rules briefing. Like I'm always the guy to volunteer that, because I love explaining it. I love answering questions. I like everyone seeing a successful meet, whether it's your first one or your 20th one. Doesn't matter to me. But one thing that's always the same at every meet, like the pouty lip and then the walk away. I'm like, dude, ask your fucking ref. Like we've gone over this. Why wouldn't you ask your ref why you got a red light? And chances are it's something super simple that you could correct, no problem.
Yeah.
But they just walk away, and I'm like,
so that's actually a really good point, because if it's a squat, they may just assume that it's depth, and it might not be. Yeah,
you might have, like, after we called, rack, you moved your feet, or before rack we called your feet moving again, or like, and a lot of people don't know like subtle manipulation rules with like, that differ fed to fed, like moving your feet in and out. But with a sumo deadlift, once it goes down, like you can't jump it back in. And like, some people assume, oh, it's soft shoulders or is this or that, but you're right. Like assumptions guarantee more red lights next time when you could have just asked.
Yes. So, that's at the highest level too, by
at the very highest level.
Yeah.
It applies to everyone.
No, that's actually a really good point, because it's when I was judging, and I tried to always avoid that at all costs, it was usually when I was red lighting somebody, because I tried to stay in the head, so that way I didn't have to deal with the side bullshit, but it was normally never for what they thought it was for.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, man, you don't find out until like dinner or a week after, like, you dickhead, why'd you red light me? I'm like, dude, you didn't even fucking wait for the rack command.
Yeah.
But I smashed it. Like, it doesn't matter, dude. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
That's the beauty of it, though, because it literally applies to everyone, no matter what level.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing for newer lifters to see. Like, and that's why I'm a big, and I've talked to my buddy Eric Wilberg about this, who's another extremely competitive 198, amazing lifter, really nice guy out of, what's his new gym called? He's going to kill me for forgetting this on the fucking podcast. But great guy. But one of the biggest things we talked about was like, I reffed a meet he did in Virginia. So I was reffing, he was competing. And he said, he came up to me afterwards and we took pictures, and like, we're good friends. But at the same time, he's like, no matter if you were my friend or like what, he knew I was going to hold him to a high standard, because I would want him to do the same for myself as a competitor. And he said, so I knew if I missed something or I got something and you were sitting in a chair, like, I fucking got that shit. Like, no question. And I said, I really appreciate you saying that. And it's been weird because, throughout the last couple years, there's been calls I've made. And of course, with social media, you always see the calls float to the internet. So it sucks, because it's like you got 1,000 internet judges on you that aren't in the real seat seeing what's going down. Yeah. And like one of the most popular ones we had was Nabil, younger kid, extremely talented lightweight deadlifter. There was a meet that actually went on in my gym, and I was pretty upset about this. It was 2 nationals and an international judge. So out of the 3 of us, I was the only one that called red for up, down, and soft shoulders. And they didn't. They passed it, and it shouldn't have passed. And of course, that went on to be like number 1 on open powerlifting. And I was like, he came back like a couple, like 3 months later, because I personally invited him back to my gym to my meet. I said, hey, why don't you come break this the right way? And I'll put hand-picked judges out there that will not let shit fly. So there will be 0 questions when you get this. Like, you won't ever have to say, was that really?
Well, are there ever 0 questions?
There's not, but I think you can definitely diminish the fact with who you got in a chair. Honestly.
I think so.
Yeah. I would love to say all judges are created equally, but I strongly disagree with that.
No, they're not. And it's and this isn't a new thing either. It's my first meet was in like 82, so it was USPF, and that was kind of it, maybe AAU. And then it was shortly after the APF, and then ADFPA, I think, split, when that whole thing happened. But I can remember when being in a powerlifting gym in high school, and like the Hawaiian record breakers were going on, and there was a phone. This is obviously years,
Right.
technology hasn't changed a lot in the years, right? So a phone call came in like the Monday after the meet, and it's like, okay, you see here the gym owner speaking to somebody else, and it's like, okay, Fred Hatfield's squat was high as fuck, and it's okay. So now everybody just assumes in the gym his squat was high as fuck, and this comes from a telephone call from somebody probably in Hawaii that called somebody in California that called somebody. So it goes through all this to be able to come down, and so that was. It's always, like I said, the problems today are always the same as what they always were. They're just reshaped a little bit. And I remember Powerlifting USA, pre-internet, that if the picture showed a high squat, it was a high squat. Because all pictures, I suppose, were just supposed to always be taken in the lowest position.
Yeah, like that was always a possibility.
Yeah, and that squat remained high until the next nationals the next year or whatever it was going to be. So it's faster obviously now than before.
Well, now of course, like even with the ones like they're doing the Ghost Clash this weekend, I talked to I have two people competing down there, and actually Eric, we just talked about, he's helping handle one of my guys for me while he knew I was out here. But now we have like instant replays. Now we have like, and I think I don't know if they're doing it at Ghost Clash, but I know they're doing it at Pro again. And WRPF, they've assigned like a jury at a higher level, like pro style meets, where even the jurors coincide with the refs.
This is in real time?
Yeah.
So they can change the lift?
Yeah.
So what's the procedure? Let's say I get red lighted, but I think it was good.
It becomes like a jury of peers. So I think they now, since they're filming so many things from the side, like, and I noticed this, my last competition was this past November, Freaks Come Out at Night in Baltimore. And they were even doing it, not the jury part of it, but like I saw how advanced like the camera crew has gotten. Like, I mean, in the hole with you, real time, like being able to instantly replay it back for anybody else. Like, I think they're going that route, almost like how they would do things with the NFL.
Yeah.
And looking at it through that jury of peers, like how they would almost like replay and talk about like ref calls and decisions and flags in the NFL, and now they're going to be able to do that and are saying we should apply that to powerlifting.
Are there controls? Granted, I don't think this is like in place, but what would be the controls to keep every lifter from not doing that? Like
contesting every lift ever?
Yeah. Well, every red light.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure on that, just because like we haven't run a pro level with that yet, and I'm sure we're going to talk more about that for the pro, because like I said, I just recently accepted a position on we're not really calling it the board, we're calling it more like executive committee type style for the WRPF. So it's me and 3 other people plus Dr. Kern. But we're going to be implementing that into the pro and some of the other high level meets like the PPCs that are offering a lot more money and at stake. So that way it's you have the ability to overturn, but like we're going to work out how that's going to work out as far as electronics go. Like, is there going to be an additional referee button? Like, I'm not sure how that's all going to be played out yet, but I think it's something definitely interesting to consider for the future of the meets, especially with more money going at stake. Yeah.
That would bring in, I mean, just questions to throw out that I would have is granted, I come from the Raw came in after I retired, right? So I'm coming from a different bias, a different world. Is, you can go by crease of the hip to a certain point, right? You get over 400 pounds. I've known a couple people that we had sit on a pop can, and the crease of the hip does not break parallel to their knee. Right. You got to look at the actual hip joint, for some people. And it's not just the bigger people. It could be thicker or shorter, or small femurs. Where that's one of the issues I've always found with the rule books is the diagram sucks. But nobody wants to change the diagram.
It doesn't really cater to a multitude of reasons and body types.
But see, you can do this if it's video, right? But then the rule book has to state exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things we've been talking about too, not only with the idea of the videos and the changing of the diagrams with the idea of like how things are specifically worded within the rule books, because there's a lot of changes. Like even when I was more in with the USPA, that I was like, man, they should really change this. Like this can definitely be misconstrued for not only an advanced lifter, but fuck, you confuse the shit out of your new lifters.
Yes.
So I definitely think that's something to consider. And I think one of the more important things, especially with like you and me talking about this, is the openness and willingness to have conversation about it. Like you and me can sit here and contest and talk about rules without like flicking each other off under the table. Like,
well, yeah, that's,
I think there's so many people closed off from having actual conversations about things and looking to offer solutions and possible conversations to solve problems rather than just immediately dismissing them.
Oh, of course.
And I think that's been such a huge problem in the last couple of years.
No, it is. It is. And actually, we'll go down that rabbit hole next. But the reason why I'm really thinking like people ask me what are my views on XXX and powerlifting, and my default answer is I don't care. I don't compete anymore. Right. So, you know, I can be like a mentor that's been through the shit competed for 20 some years and been around it my whole life. It's not up to me to decide, you know, I can throw ideas out. But what I'm really, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking AI, right? Because now we're getting very close to where this could be AI judging it, but the AI is going to have to go off whatever it's told to go off. So whatever that worded description is in there of what that's supposed to be is what it's going to react to, because it will not have human, I don't want to say error, is that the right word? Discrepancy, like human discrepancy. Like, you know, if you got a 400-pound dude, like there's this physically he's not possible.
Like how are you going to word that in a change that robotics can pick up?
Exactly.
Versus like a human being able to think and actually analyze the situation in real time.
Yes, and if we can't even word it in such of a way that a basic human can understand,
how the fuck's a robot going to do it?
I think that's the direction, right? Because eventually you can have, you know, that. And I'm just talking shit now because things are expediting so fast when it comes to AI and all this other stuff that's coming out through there. They would be the main judges, and then the humans would just be the ones to, if there is a call, like, man, that's fucked up.
Replay the video, let's make a human judgment call.
Then it goes from there, because my fear would be if everybody has the right, like, first off, this is powerlifting, so everybody's going to piss and moan. Who has the right to do it and not to do it, to overturn it, right? Because now the meat's 3 times as long. Because every fucking red light, you know, with some of these people, it's going to be contested. And then if it's just the world record, well, what if the second attempt was preparing them to be able to hit a world record on the third, but
they knew, and I mean, that's more common in like gear too. Like you knew, you know, there might be one prepping you for that you're going to allow that additional weight to like break the suit further. And like, you knew that was happening, but like, again, like you got to think in the ways of like, even third and fourth attempts in powerlifting, like a fourth attempt, you have to be within a certain weight range to break that. And the third attempt has to be successful. Well, what if they were just using that to propel them for that higher up attempt?
One of the things that I've seen with, you know, not just the judging that we're talking about, but just call it federation bullshit. I've seen it I've seen it since the USPF to the APF to the APF to the IP. I've seen it my whole entire life. And in some ways, the more it changes, the more it stays the same. But the one big disconnect that I see, and it's more obvious to be able to point it out in today's world than before, is people forget the majority of lifters and who they are, right? So in typical politics, not to go down that rabbit hole, but in typical politics, most people will agree it's bullshit that, you know, the top 5% are making rules for everybody else, right? That's not, when everybody else is not listened to, then it's just like a dictatorship, right? It's kind of how it falls. Where in powerlifting, the people that have the biggest voices actually end up being, and this has always been this way, end up being the vocal minority. And by that, if we use Wilks as a guide and say a 500 Wilks is like what, intermediate?
Now it is, yeah.
You know, kind of like intermediate. If you go and look at the people that are in the vocal minority, they pretty much have well over a 500 Wilks, usually over a 400 Wilks. And then if you look at open powerlifting, they make up about 3 to 4% of every powerlifter that competes, which in turn, now they're speaking for the 97% that nobody's listening to. You see where and this is like I said, it's not just now, it's just now you can see the metrics by just looking and saying, like, well, who's speaking for these people? Like, if this is a problem, who's speaking for all the lifters that actually make up the majority of the sport, the 97%? And why do we assume that the people who are speaking are saying what they would want,
like are in touch with that community of lifters,
when they're usually not?
No, they're
because they live in a
removed.
bubble.
Yeah,
right. So they live in their own bubble that own 3%, which I think it's important for, you know, any issues to be discussed, but I think it's important for the issues to be discussed with the people who actually pertain to them, and the majority needs to be heard, you know, listened to.
right.
But hence, you know, to argue against what I just said, a lot of the majority only compete once and leave. So I would say that might be the bigger problem of the sport.
Right.
Right. So
customer retainment.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So it's so there's a lot of issues that when I see, because a lot of the things, even some of the recent stuff that just came out, I didn't even know about that. It's like 3 weeks after the fact. Somebody's like, well, what do you think about? And I'm like, well, what do I think about what?
Yeah.
And then we'll say, well, this, and this with whatever federation. And so that was my first reply was, well, how does this impact the bottom 95% of all other lifters in that realm, whatever that is? And then there's always a pause. I'm like, well, did you think about that? You know, because you should, because those make up the majority of the dues, entry fees, you know, all the other kind of stuff. I'm not saying that there's not fucked up stuff, but it's always been an interesting thing to me, to where that vocal minority will always, not always, I hate to use the word always, because that's terrible choice of words, many times are the same people that will bitch when they're in the minority, or when they're in the majority, but a minority.
It's powerlifting. They're going to bitch either side of the fence they're on.
Yeah, exactly. But I wonder that, because it's, even with top lifters that have been around for a long time, at a certain point they forget why they got in it in the first place. Right? And I think that looking at issues that they think are big issues from the perspective of how they were when they first came in may or may not change their perspective on what the solution would be.
That's a really good point. And I think those people with those, I agree with you, many of those people with those top level numbers do forget why, you know, you came into the sport in the first place, and are going to speak for the position they're at in now in their lifting career versus where they were. And where they were is the majority of people it's going to be affecting. Those first couple years, that first meet, the first time you renew a membership for a Fed, you're like, those are the people that are making up where many of the issues are going to impact.
Yeah.
If you're that caliber of a lifter and you have that, you know, applying Wilks or dot score to get you to invitationals, no matter what fucking Fed it is, you're going to go where the money is.
Yeah.
So, like, what stake do you really have in one particular Fed's drama?
Yeah.
You know, if WRPF is offering this payout for here and US Open Raw is making this offer payout here, and you're like, well, fuck their morals, I don't like what they're doing, but money's over here, like, you have the ability, because of your lifting ability, to jump ship and just go. Yeah.
Well, now when you're talking that position of lifter, now we're talking in probably less than 1%.
Yeah, you're the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. I mean, you're really kind of trimming it down in there. And one of the other things, and you have younger lifters that you help, and you're a teacher, right? So there's this as well, is I live in a bubble, dude. So keep all this in context.
No.
I live in a fucking bubble, man.
It's a fucking awesome bubble.
Yeah, I know. But even when this was presented to me with whatever the recent drama was, it was through the Discord, which is, it's. Right. I don't spend as much time on Instagram even as I used to. It's more just like a messaging app for me than anything else at this point in time. But so. When I was kind of given my take on it, because my take is usually in such a way that how does this impact the lifters that are in this person's gym or the lifters that you're helping? And if I have younger lifters, let's say you have teenage lifters, younger lifters, and you're going to send them to a meet, say you can't be there, you're going to have say you're going to handle the younger lifters that I have. My conversation with you, if you say, hey, I want to take them to this meet, it's going to kind of go like, well, who's the meet director, right? So is it a good meet? Like, is it just a clusterfuck? Like,
I think the very question that you would start with in that scenario of you asking me that is one of the biggest questions out right now. Like, who the fuck's in charge of your meet?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think so many people miss that part.
No, it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And it should be glaringly obvious, but it's not. Like, many people just, and of course, again, you've been around so much longer than me, and you've seen all the drama, all the changes, and history repeat itself, and fucking powerlifting is not excluded from that.
Yeah.
But the idea that you have, a lot of meet directors doing things right, but because of the majority of those people who are removed making those calls, that the lower level meet directors that are doing right by the majority of the lifters, your new ones, your first couple of years that are making those meets what they are and so special for those people, those are the ones suffering the consequences. When your Fed fucks up, they often have the money to take the heat.
Yeah.
Right. We fucking don't.
Yeah. Well, it's the question that's going to come after that will be, or the conversation will be, look, man, these are younger kids. I'm doing everything in my power to keep them off shit. I don't want them taking shit because they're way too young to take shit. I mean, these are conversations I'm having, because I'm not so much concerned with the meet director is going to be whatever the quality of the meet. Is it going to be a squat stand that's going to fall apart? What kind of bar? I mean, just the basics like
basic
that.
Safety.
And then the other part of it is I'm not. That meet director is not going to influence or these lifters in any way whatsoever. He's just putting the meat on, right? I'm not even that fucking concerned with the judges. Like, who's the judge? Are they going to be fair? They're not going to be fair. The conversation I'll have with the helper is keep them away from these fuckers in the warm-up room that are going to be like, dude, how strong are you? Fuck, you should be taking trend, dude.
Yeah. Fuck.
That's my number one concern, is the influencers or the people who are in the warm-up room that could very well convince, one of the kids that I want to stay off drugs to go on drugs. And so when I see, this latest debate, I'm like, I understand what this latest debate is. I get it. But if we're going to talk about morality,
who's the guy that's walking around and safeguarding all my fucking 16-year-olds from the guy walking around popping test suspension in the middle of the fucking warm-up room in front of him? Yeah,
I mean, so if we're talking about a safe environment, then let's talk. I'll have that conversation. Let's talk about that, because theirs lies, for me, the biggest concern.
Yeah.
Right. And not that this is a great sport. It's it's a great sport, but
sometimes when you talk about stuff, you're like, is it great sport?
For the most part, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's grown, the way that it's grown. But a lot of these problems are so multifaceted.
Yeah.
That it kind of gets lost in the minutia. So let me take all I said and then flip it back on you, because you're in the midst of all that. And what's your opinion with not just that issue, but because if it's not that issue, it's another one.
And it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because when you talk about, like, especially funny, we're talking about not funny as in the actual thing is funny, but when we look at situations like, possible influences, in the warm-up room when you're trying to keep your kids safe and all that kind of stuff, versus the kind of drama that is more blown up on social media. Like, obviously we can stem one problem from another, but those are two vastly different things and vastly different means of safety, right? You know what I mean? And it's
and both can occur at the same time.
Exactly, which is terrifying because only one sees the light.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, everyone's talking about who's doing what wrong and not getting caught for it, and then it's like basic every meet functions like what you're talking about, again, happen probably much more frequently than the main issues being arguing.
Yeah.
And that's the terrifying part. Like, and that's when it comes back to, like, you know, again, who is your meet director? What kind of staff are they having? Like, who occupies and fills those meets? Like, I mean, I'm fucking nobody. Like, I'm nobody. I'm just a dude that fucking found weights and loves this shit.
Well, that's most people that get in the sport.
Right, and that's what people don't understand. That's most of us. But I mean, like, people come out and do, like, me and Jess's meets at the cave at my gym because they know what kind of people we are. They know what kind of standards we hold ourselves to. They know what kind of bullshit we won't tolerate. They know where we align ourselves, right? And so not only are you getting, like, you know, your staff that is, like, pretty much handpicked that agree with us. You're also getting your other members of staff, your referees, and the kind of people that occupy those meets as participants are also in that same realm. So I would argue that based on your meet directors and who's running things, you almost start to, your meets, for lack of a better word, start to put out a particular vibe that people look for.
Yeah.
Right?
I would agree with that.
So they start to, like, align themselves not only with your values, but what I fucking agree with all that. I want to do that meet for that reason. We had a dude fly out from fucking Reno to come do I'm in fucking Salisbury, Maryland. Like, dude, nobody flies from Reno to Salisbury. Fly all the way out here. It was his first year, celebrating his first year of sobriety. And because he knew me and Jess's story, he's like, I wanted it to be here. And, like, lo and behold, he actually won our best lifter. So he got to win a kabuki bar from us that we all signed. And he was, like, fucking tore up. But I mean, that alone was fucking incredible for us. Like, that you're making that much of an impact, you know, and you don't fucking realize it. So there's so many people watching you at all times. And actually, just Valentine's Day dinner, we were sitting out here talking about this, and, you know, with all the Fed changes, and we'll get into that, and, like, all the stress and stuff we're doing right now with it, because we're hosting a meet as soon as we get back from this. We're over at Chiseled, and we're like, you know, we're sitting there, we're eating dinner together, it's a really nice night, and we hardly ever get to go out together because we're so fucking busy all the time. I'm like, wouldn't it be fucking awesome to just, like, not be those people for a while? Like, how cool would it be to be fucking normal people that wouldn't be the people that everyone turns to depend on, that everyone, you know, hey, I have this issue, how can you solve that? To not be, for a lack of a better phrase, the man, you know, that's the guy you turn to. Like, how fucking cool would it be to not be those people? And I was like, well, why do we always have to be those people? Why is everyone always like, Travis Jess, like, those are the people we're gonna, I know they're gonna take care of us. It's not a question. It's never, can you do this? It's like, here's the problem. I already know you're be the person to fucking solve it. And I think that's what a lot of meet directors and a lot of people who host become, right? They become those problem solvers. They become those people who are willing to have those conversations for their region, for their lifters, no matter the fucking level. And I really want to see powerlifting, like, make that turn and make that push where it unifies itself like that with like-minded people. And I know there's always going to be a discord. There's always going to be a discrepancy. There's always going to be this and that and other people spying on each other's meets to fucking talk shit and blow shit up in people's face because it's powerlifting. Yeah.
But how do you know it's not already, though, right? Because if you're looking at it through the lens of being in a bubble, how do you know it's not? You see that's the reminder I like to put out there for people. Is we all I'm just as guilty as everybody else. You know, we all get caught up in these little bubbles where you're trying to do the best for what you have, but if you were to step back and see the forest through the trees, or however that statement's supposed to be,
right?
You know, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, I don't know, say there's 50 meets this weekend. you know, and if we had some Star Trek magic power, you know, to like transform ourselves into any meet, every one of these meets we go to, there's probably somebody pulling a deadlift PR for the first time that's fucking jacked up about it. There's probably somebody else that's doing their first meet that just had the greatest weight training experience that they've ever had. There's also probably some people that are madder than fuck because they, you know, they missed a lift.
Yeah.
You know, it's all, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where I'm not too sure it's when it's gone through the growth that I've seen, you know, where when I ran the IP Nationals twice. I mean, old 2004. I can't even remember the date. So
right.
it was a long time ago. And being in the business that I'm in, I'm trying to figure out like, what is this total demographic here? Like, and how do I figure it out? So I'm like, well, how many Powerlifting USA subscribers are there? Right. And then, well, not all of them are actually competitive lifters. And then how many members are there of each federation? And then no federation will tell you.
Right.
You know, so being part of the IPA at least gave me that one, you know, and other people in the IPA. If I was to guess, and at the time Ricky Crane was kind of agreeing with where I was at, and maybe 18, 20,000 total lifters. You know, and back then Multiply might have made up 3,000, right? So it was never the majority to begin with, even though, sorry guys, facts are facts. I mean, most of it was single ply, right? Because the other fact nobody likes to really expose and agree with, the largest majority of those competitors in the sport are drug-free, right? If they're not, and they're all blasting, then explain to me when you go look at a top 100 and you get down to everybody that's under the top 200 people, explain to me why all their lifts are so shitty. Are they all getting ripped off? You know, all their trends fake? You know, because there's a lot. But when you live in this bubble, right, then all the meets you go to, that's what it is. But to step back, so we go from, say, 20,000 is a good guess to like 200,000 if you were to go look at it all now. The only thing on open powerlifting that makes it kind of hard is your name will be in the list with raw, like in a couple of the lifts. So you got to look at like raw with wraps and then raw with sleeves.
Yeah, because if you don't change it, it just classifies as raw and wraps together as like raw as a blanket term.
And there's no way to look at the total number of lifters. Right. So if I just looked at like raw with sleeves, say it's 76,000, raw with wraps, 82,000. Well, you might have competed twice that year, you know, so you could be on both of those lists when you sort. Right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But so either with that, so you go from 20,000 to 200,000 if you add it all together. That's a 10 times growth rate over a period of what, 20 years? Yeah,
so despite bubbles, like that's like you and me arguing saying how the fuck could you not see it growing?
That's fucking huge. That's fucking huge. Like that is a giant growth rate, you know. So sometimes when people are like, man, the sports, it should be growing.
It's dying.
It's dying. It should be growing. This is, I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. This is 10 times growth rate. Holy cow. You know, if you could invest in it, this would have been a hell of an investment over a period of 20 years.
Yeah. If you could invest in just the sport and not a particular fed, that'd be the way to go.
Yes, well, unfortunately, that's what I think people lost touch of, is what the sport is.
Yeah.
You know, and it is those people breaking those PRs. And you see it because you run meets.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody who breaks a PR has a story. Hell, everybody that does a meet has a story. You're a story writer. So if I challenge you and said, just take anybody that does one of your next meets and write their story. How did they find powerlifting? How do they get to the meet? Take the person that has the worst dots. I bet that's the best story.
That's a good point. That's a great point. It's weird too, because like, you know, I think especially with like what's going on lately, I often forget like the position I'm in now, like in my role, for lack of a better, my role in the sport now. You know, I would classify my role in the sport much less of a competitive lifter. Like I still like to lift, obviously I still like to compete, but you know, given injuries, given all that, given new opportunities, I would say that's not my primary role anymore.
How do you balance that though?
you don't, for lack of a better words. But I think what really like reins it in for me, and again, this is like kind of speaking on that bubble, is like, so, you know, I'm a teacher. I teach 10th and 12th grade English, and one of my seniors, she rides horses, and her horse barn's like 10 minutes from my gym. She fucking hates her job. I think it's like some rinky-dink coffee shop. She hates it as a senior, of course. You know, it's like your first couple jobs, bullshit. And I told her, I was like, hey, you're super close to my gym. I'll pay you 3 times a week. Come vacuum, do the bathrooms, dust. I said, I won't make you like pick up and organize heavy ass plates or anything like that. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'll totally give you a job. I'll pay you a little more. You know, I asked her, you know, what's the going minimum wage? I'll pay you more than that. So she was like, for real? I was like, yeah. So Wednesday night before we flew out here, I gave her first bi-weekly paycheck, right? She was tickled pink. She was super happy. Sweet kid. And she was like, hey, before you pay me, before all that shit, will you teach me how to deadlift? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, of course. Like, of course. I was like, I'm deadlifting tonight. Like, in between my sets, we'll take it slow. Like, I'll show you some few things. We'll learn together. She's like, all right, cool. So I just picked up Sportcraft bars. For the gym. Shout out Sam, super awesome delivery. She's the best. Hooked me up right away. No bullshit. Like, talked to her Saturday. Shipped my bars fucking Monday. Love that shit. Because I'm tired of messing with companies that fuck around. But so we got our thing. She sent me a whole bunch of prizes and stuff for our lifters, a bunch of t-shirts and stuff. So my new girl that's working for me, she's a barn girl. She doesn't have like workout t-shirts and stuff. So I was like, hey, I got something for you. And I gave her one of the new Sportcraft t-shirts. And so we're about to start like deadlifting, and she goes, hey, I think if I'm going to do this, I should wear my new gym shirt. I was like, okay, go get your shirt. So she comes out in a Sportcraft t-shirt, and I was like, it's pretty touching. That's pretty fucking cool to see, you know, of me not influencing a kid. You know, I wasn't like, hey, you're cleaning my gym, you're going to learn to lift. Like, it wasn't like that at all. Like, she made this decision on her own. And so, you know, we go through a few sets. We're talking about, you know, like pinning your shoulders, keeping your arms long, all the things to, you know, not get her fucked up. And she does like 95 pounds. I'd got bumpers last year, just for, you know, some basic stuff. So she's doing 25-pound bumpers on each side, does a couple reps. Said, okay, so now we're going to do, you know, what they call a 3x3, but we're not going to reset at each top of each rep. You know, you're going to fix your form before you go. You're going to rebrace, and we're going to go. And so she was learning how to write it down. It's like a 3x3 at 95 pounds and stuff. And so she gets done. She goes, I think I want to add a 5 to each side. I said, okay, cool. As long as we're safe, I'll let you do that. So she does it for like a 2x3. She writes it all down in her little journal. She goes, hey. I was like, what's up? She goes, I think I want this to be like my new hobby. I was like, yeah. She was like, is that okay with you? I'm like, of course it's okay with me. But like, just that subtle interaction, like, it makes you see again, like, yourself younger, and like why you started this, and like what makes this sport the sport. Like, you continually, the more pressure I get, the more shit I have on my plate, the more I have to do for the sport, the more people I'm trying to help, I think it navigates you further away from that.
It does.
And I'm sure you've experienced that.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It most definitely does. And one of the things Louis told me that I didn't listen to, but I learned from and then got away from real quick, is to not run meets, you know, to not get involved at that level, you know. And at the time, I'm like, you know, fuck you. And I get it now, right? Where with some of the lifters that have come out here over the past month or so, a lot of the conversations I'm having with them is like, why are you even bothering with the politics of the sport? You're still a lifter. This should not matter for you. What matters for you is your total, you know, because I use the analogy of the Wizard of Oz. Like, you get to a certain point in the sport where you start to see behind the curtain, and you're not going to like what's behind the curtain. It's like, so much better just to go down the trail.
It's like being invited on a really awesome game show, and you chose the wrong fucking curtain, and you're like, could you close that one again for me, just so I can go back to being an audience member?
But imagine if you don't have to look behind there, and you can just keep going down your strength road. that's a way better path. There's less stress, there's less cortisol, they can recover better, their training's going to go better. They're really not going to make that much difference anyhow, you know, because they're not in a position of power or whatever to make that difference outside of a suggestion here or there. All they're going to do at the end of the day is fuck up their own training. And that's from a selfish standpoint, but it will. And for what? You know, because in 4 years, it's just going to be a different Fed with a different issue, and it's going to be the same problem, and it's the pivot away from it. But that's why I said, how do you balance it? Because now when you are, and it's not a bad thing to be the person on the other side of the curtain either, because that's where change is going to happen the most, right? Now, when you're that person, it does become really hard, you know, to compete. You know, and it's, I'm not saying you can't do it, because many have. So Louis was wrong from that aspect.
But what I think it comes down to the essential question when you're talking about something like that is, if you reimagine those scenarios and you're saying, you know, there's many people who have been on both sides of the curtain and still competed and done extremely well, how much weller would they have done having not seen that other side and continue just on the lifter side of the aspect?
I can only speculate, but I would say better.
Right.
But there's a huge caveat there.
Right.
But that's assuming that they're staying out of all the bullshit too.
Yeah.
Because I would say it's impacting the people who don't have the position to do anything, probably more than the position of those that do. Right? Just because they're stressing out about it all the time. Because if you're being asked, you know, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? There's a reason, you know, because you've run meets and, you know, there's a lot of reason. But if the lifters are being asked, but they're not associated in any way, their pressure is different than yours. You know, their pressure is like, why are you asking me in the first place? Like, I have nothing to do with this. So why are you bothering? So, and now you're confusing them on where they should compete. Like, as if I was already going to compete here and now I have to go compete here, because if I don't, I'm going to be judged by the internet.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
You know, now if they just didn't give a fuck and didn't know what was going on with any of it, they'd still go to whatever meet they were going to go to.
So it's weird. So even as like a higher level lifter, like I experienced that. So like when USPA East and the whole Johnny Lane thing happened in 2020. So fuck, this is our second time going through something like this, which is why we were both like, is this really fucking worth it? And like that was more the Valentine's Day conversation I was speaking of. Like, wouldn't it be great to not be this people to handle this shit all the fucking time? So we're on the way to the meet in 2020, and it's sanctioned USPA. What had happened was Johnny Lane had the gyms, his host gyms, signed with Intense Attire, his brand, and not USPA. So he was contracting as an individual contractor. So they were tied to him regardless of the Fed. So as we're going to this meet, we're getting like texts and seeing on emails and, you know, messages, it's USPC, it's USPA, it's USPC. And this shit flip-flopped like 5 fucking times before we even got to the hotel. So I'm having people who are competing say, Travis, I know you're doing this meet. If you pull out, like a whole bunch of people are going to pull out. So then it was like weird, because it was kind of like one of the first times I felt I had been put in a position where like I was being judged for doing a particular federation or meet. And it was like, you know, people who looked up to me, who respected me, who, you know, enjoyed my content and like my judgment calls and what I had to say about the sport. They're like, you know, if I fucking back out, do I let all these other people's hard work go to waste? And at the end of the day, it's a fucking meet. So I'm like, I contacted Open Powerlifting and I was like, hey, I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. I just want, at the end of the day and at the end of this meet for Open Powerlifting, whatever fucking happens, that it remains sanctioned, and all these people who put in all this fucking work and did this meet, that it goes live on Open Powerlifting. It counts for them, because that's what I fucking care about. Because I was like, how much would it suck if we all did the meet together? Not about me, but like all these other people who continue to do the meet and then it not even fucking count for them.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you forget about the top 5%, say there's 200 other people in the meet and it's their first meet. they probably, I'm going to guess, would like to see their name at least where they fall in the rank and order.
And that's what I told him. I was like, dude, fuck me. Like, worry about everyone else. Like, I'll do another meet. I don't give a shit. But some of this is their first time. Their second time. My friend Kyle, who trained at us when we had the barn, it was his very first meet. We were doing together. And so, like, I'm looking at this dude literally next to me in the car. I'm like, how shitty would I feel if we got there and backed the fuck out because of some fed bullshit that wasn't our fault? And now my guy who trained with me this whole time isn't even going to do his first fucking meet because of that. Fucking garbage. So I told everyone, fuck, I don't give a fuck what fed it is, I'm going to do it. So I have a USPC on there. And of course I got backlash on it. People were commenting on the squad like, I can't believe you're doing that in front of a USPC banner. You support him, you support this. And I'm like, I support powerlifting, dude. I support the people who are out here who fucking want to get a total. I support the first timers out here. I don't give a fuck what's going on. And it sucks because that was the last time me and him spoke. Yeah,
well, my reminder to you would be like the reminder to a lot of these other people is, remember, that's the vocal minority. Like, most of the people who follow you, because you got a decent following, they're never going to comment. Man, the nature of the internet, and I've lived this, 25 years I've been online. The nature of the internet is people don't tell you do good work. They don't. They don't message you and say, hey, you're doing a good job.
But they'll let you know when you fucking suck.
They don't, right? They don't. It's such a minority. It's like 1 out of 1,000. Like 1 out of 1,000 messages are positive. Yeah. All the other ones are either bad or asking, like, what should I do with his injury, or, do tattoos hurt? Or they're that.
Yeah.
And it gives you this warped sense of reality. Right, because there's all those other people that aren't saying anything. How do you know they agree with the people who are? They don't. Yeah. Right, and now this already, because in your gym, I'm gonna just speculate, it's the opposite. 90% of what you hear in the gym is probably always good stuff.
Yeah.
Right, because it's in person, it's personal. It's like, man, you're doing a good job. You write great fucking articles. You do all this. That's the real world, right? And there's the digital world. The real world is the real world, right? The digital world fucks up, and we all agree with this, it fucks up your perception of reality. But we forget that, especially when you're online and you're trying to help people, right? Because now you're a bigger target. Because you're trying to help people, you're making somebody else feel inadequate that may not be trying to help people.
Yeah.
So now they're using that to blast. You see what I'm saying?
Not only that, but I mean, I know you above all people have experienced this too. Like, you can't pour from a fucking empty cup, and God knows you've had your fucking cup empty quite a bit.
You have to learn to, though.
Yeah, you have to learn to. But I'm saying there becomes a certain expectation now where, like, your cup, it doesn't fucking run out. That bitch is always full. Right?
No, yeah.
And it's hard to be that. Like, it's hard to constantly be like, to watch what you say, to not lash out, to always be that positive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody told me a long time ago that, I don't think any of us are ever going to change the world, right? But we can make sure the world doesn't change us, right? So that's where my motivation with all that comes from. Like, if me helping people makes me feel better, then that's what I'm going to do, selfishly.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what makes me feel better. And I'm not going to let the world change that, because then the world wins. So if it's a battle between us versus the world, I want to win. I'm just trying to find some ways to put words behind, the context of all of it, and not saying that, it doesn't get to you.
Oh yeah,
right. That'd be a huge lie, a giant lie, because it does, right? Because sometimes you wonder if it's all worth it, and I'll use the analogy because, and we can segue this a little bit, of your squat, right? Because you blew both your quads out, right? And I'm a person that I love to squat. I mean, it's the only exercise I could ever do is going to be squat. It's always been that way. There's just something about the squat. It's fucking awesome.
I know. I used to read your shit when you're like, I fucking hated deadlifting. I didn't have to deadlift. I wouldn't deadlift. I would do squat variations that make deadlift better, so I wouldn't have to deadlift.
There's just something about the squat, straining through the squat and all that other kind of stuff. And and it's been taken from me many times, hip replacement, this replacement, I can't grab a bar, all this other stuff. So if I can go back and say I've spent most of my life just building my squat to have it taken away, to build it again, to have it taken away, to build it again, to have it taken away, I'm going to build it anyway. You see what I'm saying? So just because you can spend your whole life trying to build something, whole life trying to build a squat, trying to build a business, trying to write the best book you could ever write, and then after it happens, somebody just steals it, takes it away, burns it. Write it anyhow. Build it anyhow. Because that's where the motivation comes from. By not doing it. So I don't know if I'm articulating what I'm trying to say, but the building it part is the part that fires you up, and don't let anybody take that, and you've been through it with your squat, like you've done it with more than your squat.
Yeah.
You've done it a lot, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out, where you're going to put those efforts into, because sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. If it's not worth it, then fuck it, don't do it. If it's worth it, fuck it, do it, because you can build it back. You can always build it. Blow both your quads out. It's not easy to come back from. You did. I'm sure people told you wouldn't be able to do it. It's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. You didn't even need them to tell you weren't going to do it. You were going to try to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You see, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You do it anyway.
Like you already knew.
You already knew.
You didn't need anyone to tell you that. You just already knew.
Yeah. So I think when people get to the point where they don't want to build it anyway, is when that's
when it's really gone.
Yeah. And that's when it's time to probably look into something that you do want to do. All the time, because it's just, there's no payoff, right? So with the meets and, all the other kind of stuff, as long as that running that meet, and you'll know because you're running a meet next week, right? When that meet's over, well, not when it's over, a couple days after it's over, yeah. I've been down the you'll know if it's worth it or not, because you have this unique opportunity to watch all these stories play out that we talked about. The person breaking this PR, the person breaking this PR, they creep up on you too. Because somebody might tell you, hey, look, this person just went through, chemo. You're like, fuck, I didn't know that. Right? And then you see that. How cool is that to put on the event that happens in? But
the crazy part is that's every meet.
That's
every fucking meet. There's always a story you don't know that's every fucking meet.
But see, with anything that gives you that deepest satisfaction has a price. It's a risk benefit. You see, so you don't get that if you're not willing to pay this.
Everyone forgets, no matter if it's, rebuilding something or putting something on so that others have a chance to rebuild something, nothing's fucking free. It's always going to cost you something.
Of course.
Sometimes you much more than them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's to segue off that into your squat, right? Because it's the same. To me, I think it's the things that we learn in the gym carry over everywhere.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's just figuring out how to connect the chords. Maybe it carries over into the administrative part of powerlifting or not. Maybe it don't. I don't know. Right? I have no fucking idea. Right? But I know it can. You just got to figure out how to connect the chords. And you're going to fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it happens. With your squat, that was a bad injury. I mean, I could say at least they both happened at the same time, which I guess could be a good thing. Instead of having one, then the other one happened later.
I've kind of debated that, whether it was a positive or a negative.
Yeah, because it's with my hip, I had one done, then 2 years later I had the other one done. Then I know other people that had them both done at the same time. I don't know which would be better.
Right.
It's how do you get upstairs, by the way? I mean, if you have a walker, then not up, down. How did you get down?
Down was fucking brutal. So the first thing nurses told me in the rehab facility was you're really lucky you bench a lot, because that is your saving grace right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this work. So the walker, you basically learn to adjust the front legs longer than the back legs, so they would be staggered on the steps, and then you would do a body weight dip and then lower yourself to the next one, and then move it on the awkward doubled off on the stairs, and then just dip your way down the stairs. So
which means at the bottom of the stairs you got to fix the walker again.
You stop on the bottom stair, pull your walker up while you're balancing in your braces, pull the legs even, and then go down your last step.
Yeah.
And then you would just reverse the legs on the way up.
Yeah. Both at the same time is not better.
Yeah, that sounds pretty shitty when I say it out loud.
Yeah, because now I'm thinking about how you would sit down and take a shit and all that. You can't leverage your weight on one or the other.
God bless my wife who's over there.
Yeah.
She's laughing.
Oh, yeah.
The, what are they called? Commodes?
Where the risers?
The toilet from hell?
Yes.
It's fucking terrible, man.
Yeah.
It's awful. And it's like the one you could find that was comfortable enough to like reach was also the one that would be like, okay, this puts my legs in too awkward of a position, because like the bottom part of it would dig more towards your hamstring and create slight flexion in your knee, and it would just be like the most unbearable pain while you were trying to take a shit.
Oh yeah. And you can't, because you're not like spreading your cheeks enough to actually...
It's just like trapping you in all avenues.
Yeah
it was awful, man. It was truly awful. Thank God the ladies in the hospital, I had she was probably like in her early 30s, mid 30s, and I'm in, my early 30s. So she was pretty funny. It was really nice having a younger nurse, just because like she was humorous, and it was like, you meet somebody and you have that traumatic of an injury. I'm like, hey, I'm Travis. Nice to meet you. You're going to see me butt ass naked in the next like fucking 10 seconds. And then we're going to do this for like 3 weeks. So I'm like, you got to have some humor with it and find someone that you can just laugh about it with. Cause like, dude, there's no way around it. It's fucking terrible. So like, if you can't laugh at it, like you're never going to get through it. So like we're giggling. I'm trying to fucking not fall off the toilet. We have a rope wrapped around a bucket, right? So I can pull the bucket and shimmy it up under my feet once I sit on the toilet, so my legs won't create enough flexion to hurt or hurt that bad. It does not hurt. And dude, just wrapping head to toe in trash bags every day, like it was fucking hot mess.
Yeah, with your comeback was easy to follow because you were posting stuff. Where the one thing I don't think people get is that's your challenge then at that point. It's like you want to be able to come back, so you're going to try to figure out how to come back, because it's kind of like training for a meet, but it's not training for a meet. Where in some ways, at least for myself, in a lot of ways with these, it became what I needed at that time, because training, I don't want to say it was boring, but it was kind of like the same.
You're very limited. Like you can't do like fucking 80% of what you would do. I would say 80% of anything. Like I'm in a wheelchair, so like the most you can do is park that thing up next to a cable machine and like go to town, but that's about it. And then we figured out like how to makeshift like Larson press, and then I eventually got to like chair deadlifts. But yeah, the training is extremely monotonous, like because you literally just rotate one then the other, then the other.
Well, I'm saying before that happens though, training at your level, right? You get to a certain level to where, I don't want to say it's work, like you still love it, but there's still like, okay, and here we start this next prep. It's like the same cyclical thing all the time. And then this comes through like whaps, which sucks, but then all of a sudden creatively you're like, okay, now I have to figure something out.
Yeah, and I actually, speaking of like books and stuff, I always joke that I'm going to write a book called How to Work Out Through Anything. Yeah. Just because I'm slowly working my way around my body and fucked up enough pieces where I creatively had to like come up with different splits, how things, and basically also that combined with like PT and like different programming methods as far as like what to work with, flexion at what week and what level, and like what literally allows you to slowly like unlock that range of motion. It's definitely a challenge, but I think one of the biggest things people don't see, regardless of the level of injury, obviously you don't have to blow out both your legs at the same time to like appreciate this, but people miss the opportunity to see a traumatic injury as like a chance to reevaluate and relearn. Like, one of my favorite things about training, even without injury, is like your ability to learn, right? Like, I love reading, I love learning new things. Like, I always want to continue learning and not ever be the guy who thinks he fucking knows everything, because I don't, and I never will. But when you get hurt, it changes a lot of that. Like, you have to reevaluate, you have to rethink of like, okay, if I revisit this section of training, what about this could possibly lead to this level of like fatigue or, you know, tendon inflammation, or like, what was I doing that could possibly, you know, abdicate and basically turn into this injury? And so there's a lot of things I analyzed, and of course one of them was squat frequency. Not necessarily the frequency, but the load frequency. It was extremely high. Like, I was to the point where I was comfortable, and I was recovering well, but like CNS wise, but my tendons were not, obviously. So one of the things they looked at when they did the surgery was like, this is just general, like, way overuse.
What did your tendons look like?
Fucking the like crab meat, like when you break open a crab claw.
So like exploded.
Oh yeah, no, the one was full exploded. He said it looked like a grenade went off inside. There's just nothing left. I'm sure if you're around tomorrow and we're doing a train your ass off, you'll see the one quad has a, like, where your VMO, your little chicken nugget grows.
Yeah.
My one has grown back, but the other one has started to grow too, and it's about even width. But the bottom part of my left one where it exploded and they had to reattach at a higher attachment point, it's just gone. Like, it's not it's smaller. No, like, it's gone.
What was the other one? Was it just clean tear?
Full off the bone, like, but rolled in, stayed in the sleeve, so they could pull it back down.
Okay, all right. So there was something accumulating for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
He basically was like, dude, if it didn't happen today, like, that shit was gonna happen.
Okay.
And he said the same thing about my tricep.
Yeah.
He said because they thought it was distal tricep, medial, and he said it was gonna be like 2 pins, and then when they got in there, he was like, dude, it was fucked. Like, there was like a lightning bolt zigzag tear through like another one. He was like, if it wasn't that day, like, it was gonna give. He's like, just be glad it was with 400 pounds and you weren't in a fucking shirt. Yeah,
the reason I'm asking, there's a big difference between acute, you know, and what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, so the load frequency was one thing. Did you find anything else that, when you were zeroing in on it?
I think it's, especially for like a classic raw lifter, because I mean, I hadn't like switched and committed to geared lifting yet, was the full range of movement too, because I was constantly punishing those joints and those tendons through entire ranges of motion. And I've noticed in gear, like, I feel much better, not only the assistance of gear, but like utilizing box more frequently, utilizing reverse bands, right?
Yeah.
I'm not always going through that full range at that intensity. And I think, I was doing like 7+ on auxiliary bars, like on a transformer. I was doing that on a straight bar, and I was doing multiple times a week. So I was, for my size, squatting 700+ twice a week, deadlifting 7+ twice a week. Like, that was a shitload.
80% plus.
Yeah. Just wear and tear on my body.
Yeah.
So
anything from the nutritional standpoint that you were able to pin on, or was that pretty much a neutral factor?
I think that was a pretty neutral factor. Like, as far as like, my nutrition's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I stay relatively, I would say, pretty lean all year round.
I guess let me reframe that, hydration standpoint.
Oh yeah, I suck at drinking water, dude.
Okay, all right.
Hydration is probably definitely a factor as well. I try to utilize like some kind of hydration packets in water now, like usually daily. And stuff like that. I was very bad about drinking water, especially at the intensity I was training. I was probably only getting in, like, realistically, like a half gallon a day.
Yeah.
And
now, you were, injuries are a weird thing. So physically, you'll come back before you will mentally, right? So mentally, that's my own opinion would be, that's what puts people out more than the physical.
The mental.
The mental part. But the mental part, because if I'll ask you, if you if you're being completely honest, it's still there. You just learned how to work with it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like that's sound.
Talk about that a little bit, because I think people will assume as soon as your numbers start coming back up,
they're like, he's better 100%.
Yeah, and mentally better too.
Right. So one of the things that started early, and this is so with COVID restrictions in the rehab clinic, they would alternate days. So it was like Jess could come see me a day, my mom could see me a day, Jess would come see me. They just rotated like that. You couldn't have a bunch of people in there. So one of the things that started happening, like before those two started visiting me in front of the nurses, was, the thing you do when you're having like a nightmare, you're dreaming where you're falling and you like jolt and you like try to grab shit.
Yeah.
I was doing that awake, but like, yeah, that's
like PTSD.
Yeah. No, seriously. And I was doing it like, we're talking like 15 to 20 times a day. I was awake. And I would do it in front of nurses if they were in my room giving me meds. Like, it would terrify the fuck out of people, and it scared the shit out of me. Like, I would just be like taking a pill and just like reach for something like I was falling. And it was like I couldn't get rid of that sensation. And slowly that kind of dwindled, and I would only go through it like 5 times a day, and then like 3 times a day. And then by the time I got back home, I was only experiencing it probably like 2 to 3 times a day.
Was there anything that you were doing visualization wise to deal with this, or just letting it run its course?
I was just letting it run its course. And I mean, like, I had talked to some people, like I still had access to the internet and stuff while I was in there. So like I was talking to people who had similar injuries or the same one. I talked a lot to Emery Mullen, who had done both of his quads maybe 2 years earlier. I was talking to Micah, not the same surgery, but he's had knee replacements like multiple times. So like he had some similar, ideas with the PTSD style stuff. But yeah, it was just brutal, man, as far as like that kind of thing goes. But once you get better, that part goes away. Like some of the like triggers, but getting under a bar still, even squatting like the bar, like warming up in briefs, is like every day is like a second thought. Like you never forget the noise. It never makes you, like, even with reps. I remember doing a rep Wednesday night before I got here. I did dynamic effort, and I had done like, I was doing 8 sets of 3 ascending, and like it wasn't even that heavy, man. It was like 375 plus chains to a box, like a low box in briefs. And I was just like, man, my knee's a little sore, and it fucks with you so intensely. Like I can't even, like, you can't really convey it to people unless they've gone through shit like that, because everything bothers you. So like when you're normal, like, oh, a little tendonitis, it's cold outside, like you're like, did I fucking re-tear it? Like everything makes you question everything, and it's fucking terrifying, because you're like, how am I supposed to make it through a full squat training session if I'm terrified that my knee hurts in the morning when I wake up? Because it's no longer like, oh, I'm sore, oh, I kind of tweaked something, I'm fine. It's everything becomes bothersome to it. And now with my arm, like with benching, dude, I hear that snap noise every fucking time. Where did that go? Did it go on the top, or did it go, where did it pop? Medial, right behind the ulnar nerve. Like, no, when it actually came off, were you benching? Yeah, I was benching. So was it at the top or at the bottom? It was about 2 inches off my chest. Okay. And it was for reps. Yeah. Okay. And it wasn't like I was grinding through. It was just like the squat when it happened. It wasn't grinding through anything. It wasn't trying to max out. Wasn't anything. Yeah. Just fucking no warning signs. And that's the most terrifying part, because like, it is. You can't pinpoint why or what you were doing that was out of the ordinary. So it makes you question everything. But you can be grateful that it wasn't on the heavy single. Yeah, that and I'm always like, God, like I had done in November, this happened like 5 weeks later after Freaks in Baltimore, and that was my first meet back, but also my first meet in equipment, and I had done like 683 bench, and I was like, dude, like how fucking bad would that have been if it had blown out that night, like with that much weight, you know what I mean? Like catastrophic. And it just really, it reframes like how you feel about lifting, and like what like intensity levels you push.
What do you mean by reframes?
So, for example, like I'm very much like a balls to the wall lifter, and I have been for a really long time. And so, you know, even though that's your personality, even though that's what you enjoy, that's what you're like, for instance, we were squatting the other night, and I had my ME squat day. It was like a duffalo with some chains for a max single to a box, and it was super conservative. I definitely could have gone way fucking higher. And I looked right at my buddy Matt, and I was like, hey man, I'm just gonna do like a couple back down sets of 3, like half weight, and call it. And he was like, you're what? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. He goes, I thought you were doing like max effort today. I was like, I am. That was it. He was like, dude, you could do way fucking more. And so like he jokes and yells across the gym and goes, Jess, we gotta take Travis to the hospital. And of course, like anytime, you can't even fucking joke about that anymore. So she's like, oh my God, and like runs into the room, and Matt's like, Travis isn't gonna like push it to the fucking balls to the wall today. Something's wrong with him. We gotta take him to the hospital. And she's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even funny. But it's like, it really changes like what you're okay with. Like, if it's that conservative, I'm like, dude, take the W and walk. Mm-hmm. And I used to never be like that. Like, it wasn't done till it was done. Mm-hmm. And now I think it changes. Like, you become grateful to be here. Like, you become grateful to be able to still do this, to still be around the people that do it, to still encourage those people, and for them to still support you. Like, it's very, I can't, like, it sucks for me, but I fully believe it is nowhere near the level of suck, for lack of a better word, for everybody else. Like, I can't imagine putting my gym members, my training partner, my wife, like, I can't imagine what she feels like watching me do this shit still. Like, watching the dude she loves, like, wondering if I'm gonna fucking fall apart every set. You know, we're gonna go through this again and again and again, you know? So I think it really changes your aspect of training and like what you're willing to do to still love and compete in the sport versus like what it would take to go to that higher level again, but what more importantly, like what it would cost you. And the truth is, like, I don't know what it would cost me, and I used to want to find out, and I don't know if I want to find out anymore. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, because we talked, you know, I talked to my PT. He drove me to the emergency room. My tricep, same dude that put my legs back together, was there the night I blew out my tricep. So he was like, fuck, like, sitting next to me in the ER, and he's like, you know, people are worried. You know, everyone's worried about you. They might not say it to you directly. They might not say, hey, you need to chill the fuck out. But everyone's worried. They're like, you know, you just keep going. Like, you hurt, you heal, you go. You hurt, you heal, you go. Are you going to be here at 40? Are you going to be here at 50? Like, how fucking far are you going to take this until there's just nothing left of you to bring back? And I mean, that really stuck with me. It really did. And like, it made me really reframe like the things I do, like especially in front of Jess, that like I can have a presence in the sport, and I can be a voice in the sport and still care immensely about that. But it doesn't always have to be in a top 10 ranking. It doesn't always have to be the fucking comeback story of a lifetime and fucking this dude blew out both of these and fucking then put up this. Like, it doesn't have to be that way to make an impact in the sport. And like, that's slowly what I've begun to discover this year. And back to like a part of our original conversation where like, do you want to see what's on the other side of that curtain? I think for me, there's a certain time and approach that has led me to that side. And I think that's why I'm gravitating more towards the bullshit, why I want to see what's on the other side. Because if I have to give everything on this side of the curtain, on this side of the platform, you know, who the fuck's going to do it over here? And I think I can be that guy for a lot of people, and try not to be the guy dead over here fucking doing it.
Would you say that when you're talking about paying the price, would you say that you were overpaying before?
I think to a degree, yeah. And I think people look at a lot of top level lifters and they greatly underestimate how selfish that part becomes. Like I firmly believe this, and it holds true, I think, for many of those top 10 people. The reason I've become friends with other people in the top 10 is because they're the only ones you can really sympathize with and know, like, who gave up what to be in that position. You know, and some people are supernaturally talented and are there on a whim, and it took them 2 years to get there.
Yeah, they're the outsiders of the outsiders.
You get your outliers, you get your phenomenal, you know, you get those people. But then other ones, you're like, you know what I know. Mm-hmm. You've been through the fucking shit to get here. You appreciate what it takes to get here. But how long are you going to stay here before it's just too much? Right? Like the stress on not only your body and your health, but like your relationships. Mm-hmm. You know? Like, I have a gym, I have a foundation, I have a business. Like, I love what I'm doing. I want to be, you know, fucking alive and spending time with the people I love and enjoying the things I've built. At what point in time do you allow competitive nature to take a backseat to allow you to do those things? And I know some people would say you can have both, and there's a lot of people who have had both. But I think it's different for everybody.
When because you've had heavy squat days since this has happened, and so say you're in the gym and it's before, well, I'll let you tell me. So peaking for the last meet that you had, you squatted, I don't know if I have that one, it was like, what was it,
733.
733. So you're peaking for that one at some point in time, 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 3 weeks, something like that. Say it's a triple, say it's a single. You're getting ready for that lift. And it's necessary.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's part of the peaking phase, right? It's necessary. And in your head, there's the dialogue, right? So there's a piece of you, a voice that's going to kick in, that's going to say, fuck am I doing? Then there's the other piece that says, what the fuck did you just ask yourself that for? Right? So what, in those conversations in your own head, what does that look like? Because that's what my dialogue would be. What's your dialogue with that? Because you can't tell me that there's no doubt at any point in time from the start till you get there. So what does this look like? What's going through your head before that lift?
I think one of those things, like, I always think about, like, especially now, is like that I've experienced that massive amount of trauma, is like, you know, this could be your last one. Like, and that's true for any of us. And especially, yes, like you've talked about this, like, you know, building it, having your hip replaced, rebuilding it, having the other one taken. Like, at one point in time, like, when is that your last one? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying necessarily when you decide when it's your last one. Mm-hmm. I'm talking when it shits the bed and it is the last fucking one. You know, and I think that's one of the things I thought about is, like, dude, like, each squat I take, you know, regardless of, because I've never gotten, knock on not wood, whatever the fuck this is,
glass, knock on
glass top,
shattered glass, bad analogy.
Wrong table to knock on right about now talking about this, but each one could be your last, and it's just like, but there's just this part of you competitively that's like, and if it is, fuck it, let it be. And I always joke with my buddy Rob at the gym, and I'm like, you know, if this fucking happens again, like, you need to take me out back to the field like Old Yeller style and just like fucking put me down, because I can't live through this again. I'm not gonna put her through this again. But I think it becomes less about, like, because I know I don't have anything to prove. Like, I know that. I know everyone in my circle. I know a lot of people who respect me and follow me. Like, I don't have anything left to prove. But for some reason, there's always something that you won't let go. Like, you have something to prove to you. And it's just like, I always thought that, like, I could be one of the best to, like, ever do it. And even though I've reframed that so many times in my head as far as, like, what I want out of this, and that's changed so many times from, you know, being the best to making a difference to helping people, and just reframing this constant idea of what you should be in this sport. There's a part of you that if it's that competitive, no matter how many times you reframe it, it always still wants that original idea. And I think when I step to the bar, most of the time nowadays, it's hard to see that reframe, and I still want that for myself. But I don't want it enough for what it's going to do to other people. So,
I don't believe, I mean, it's for me, that's never gone away. I've just had to find different battles to be able to fight it with in the gym, which may be something as stupid as a high box with reverse bands fight or bar squat. Which
right. So, like, right, you find other avenues to best yourself.
Yeah, but if you take the inner battle away, I can't be the best me I want to be in anything. You know, so it's that's why I ask, right? Because it's for me, it wasn't about competing or the rank or any of that. I wanted all that, and I thought it was about all that, but at the end of the day, it was about what I'm talking about, the inner battle. Like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, what the fuck did you just tell yourself? No, and then that little inner, it's like Animal House, you know, the angel and the devil fighting.
Yeah, no, and that's a good analogy for it. But does it become about, is it your best self, or is it?
It could be the worst self.
That's the total argument. Like, is that your ultimate demise? Like, because you have, like, and back to the beginning where we were talking about, like, you have these people on the far left, you're newbies, you're just starting out in the gym, you're looking for your first meet, you're looking to get your first PRs, right? Versus where you eventually get, and it flip-flops. You've passed working out as a hobby, you've passed it as a health measure, you've passed it as this, and it becomes extreme on the far other side, where it's detrimental to your health, where you're here because you love it, but it is fucking destroying everything about you.
It can't.
Yeah.
How do you? And I don't disagree with that in any regard, in any way whatsoever. But I'd rather have my worst self happen under a bar than happen someplace else.
And I would also have to agree with that statement.
So it's. Is
this the lesser of all the evils?
Yeah. You know, I've had times where the other evils were. You know,
right.
So yes, it is. But it's how do you? It's. Let me frame it from my own stuff. It's definitely easier to mitigate, train for, plan around, structure when you don't have to competitively do anything.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's the strain, it's the inner battle, but
there's no looming deadline.
That's yes. That it's a blessing I can't grab a bar, right? But I don't know if I would have kept competing, because I would have been placing worse and worse and worse regardless of that.
That wouldn't have been acceptable to you.
No, because I don't want to be a master's lifter. I never wanted to be all those other things. It's either open or nothing. That's how I was kind of taught from the beginning. And if it's time for it to be done, it's time for it to be done. But I didn't expect that inner battle was what I craved the most. It's good, right? But I didn't expect it. You know, because
you expected the accolades and stuff that come with it.
I figured like bodybuilding training, I'd be able to tame the beast. I figured all this other stuff, I'd be able to tame the beast, and it's not. You know, so now it's like, how do I control my stupidity? Right now, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Add bands to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really tough to control my stupidity if I had to do said thing on said day. So I still plan programming. You know, it's like, here's what I want to do at the end of the year, and it's mine. Nobody knows.
Right.
Maybe one person knows what I want to do.
Like particular goals for that year.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what it's. And they're stretch goals. They're hard. You know, they're supposed to be, and they're in there. But I don't have a day. It's like by the end of the year, it could be October. Hell, last year's I hit mine in like the summer. Like fucking cool.
It's like whatever feels right. It feels like at the appropriate time, not because it's that day.
But I can move it.
Right.
You know, so if I'm hitting that peaking stuff and like, man, this shit, I'm not recovering. This feels like dog shit. All right, we'll pivot down, go through another conditioning phase. There's time, you know, and then I don't have to run my dick in the dirt, because the last 5-6 weeks of any peak for a meet is brutal. I mean, you can say I'm going to go into it as healthier than last time, but your fucking shoulders are going to hurt. Your bicep tendonitis is going to hurt. Your elbows are going to hurt. It's just part of the game. Well, if I can, you know, pivot around it, not have to do it, then I won't. Where I don't know, the question, it's odd because, you know, I've had this conversation with a lot of lifters. The question really is, you got to ask yourself, what do you really love about it in its first place? The competing, the winning, the ranking, you know, or that moment in the gym? And everybody's answer is different, you know. And if it is the competing and the ranking and all that, that's going to be a tough one, man. That's a tough one, because it's at that point, the conversation I would have is, to what point? Because I strongly believe at some point the road has to come to some kind of end. Right? Because you can't, to be completely transparent, you can't do everything at the high level for a long period of time and not expect there to be consequences.
Right.
And that's drugs, training, all that. But you can do things that at a level that's lower for the rest of your life, but it's not going to be.
You just have to be okay with that, or find a way to be okay with it.
Yeah, and it's going to be yeah, you deal and you struggle and you kind of go with all that, but I don't think you bow out if you still think that there's something left, if that makes sense.
I think that was kind of like one of my big conversations. Was I remember sitting in the hospital bed that we had got to the house. So we had hospital, like I have, you know, teacher insurance, state of Delaware. So we had a hospital bed, a commode, all that stuff at the house. We had bought an outside shower tent for the patio to fucking wash my freezing ass, my little purple legs. It was pretty bad. That I was sitting in this bed, and, you know, like, I hadn't really been upset about it. Like, obviously upset about it, thought about it, tossed it around my head a bunch. But I didn't really, like, let loose and, like, broken down. And I remember, I don't know why in particular that night, but me and Jess just had a conversation, and I told her, like, and I was crying, I was very emotional. I was like, I'm not ready to be the guy who used to. I'm not ready to be the guy that was like, back in my day, I benched 405. Like, I'm not ready. I am not ready for that yet. Like, and I told her, I was like, I still feel like there's so much, like you said, there's still so much more I can do. Like, I'm not ready to let that go. You know, it's not time yet. And I wasn't okay with it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that got me through the double quad tear. It was like, I knew immediately, like, I'm not ready to sit back. I'm not ready to be just a gym owner. I'm not ready to be just a coach. Like, I'm not okay with not competing competitively anymore. Like, I'm not ready to do one a year for funsies. Like, and who's to say if I did that, it would be fun? I'd be like, this fucking sucks. Like, this is not the same. This is not fun. You know, taking a token on everything just to be like, I did one this year. Like, how could you ever be okay with that? And I mean, I'm sure there's some people are, and no disrespect to those people at all.
I get where you're coming from.
I'm saying, like, my personality, like, how could I ever myself be okay with that for me? And I think that's one of the biggest things I've had to, like, really like grasp is like, that is coming. And how am I going to handle it? Am I going to sit back and reevaluate and reanalyze like I do with injuries and how I program new stuff and like take it as a chance to learn? Or am I going to let that completely collapse my training, what I feel about the sport? You know, how big of a change is that going to cause in me about this thing I love so much?
It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's for me, the question that I used was, you know, because when I came to Columbus, I was done, but then, you know, I don't want to reframe the same story over and over, but I decided to give it another, because of injuries and all this other stuff. I just didn't want to leave and say, what if? You know, I didn't want to be, so kind of the same question that you're talking about. I don't want to be that guy, but I didn't want to be that person that's going to look back and say, well, what if I would have? Because I learned, you know what I'm saying? You're educating yourself. You've educated yourself tremendously. So now you have all this other knowledge. So you can say, that's why I asked, do you think you were overpaying? You know, because if you're overpaying, well, then you just pay the price that you need to pay to be able to get the result that you want to get. You don't need to overpay. You've learned that. That would be stupid, you know, than all the other things.
It's the old phrase, work smarter, not harder. And it sucks when you're working harder and not smarter and you still get the results you want.
Yeah.
You just are too into it to see the, you know, impending consequences.
Yeah, and when it's recovery is one of the biggest factors, and stress creates an environment that makes it harder to recover from, then just stress management alone becomes one tool that, okay, I can better manage that, you know, cortisol is better. And then, you know, that you can put things together in such a way that you may think in your old mind you're not doing everything that you should be doing, but in your new mind you would be thinking, actually now I'm actually more all in than I was before, because the things that I thought were all in were a lot of times just scapegoats and excuses for me to do what I really wanted to do but what wasn't optimal to do. And that's how it was for me. That was like the reality of it. Like, oh, okay, I thought that was all in, but that was just me being fucking lazy. And instead of trying to figure out how to eat more calories in a better way, I just went this way.
And it's hard to think about it that way, because it's like every time you think you want it or you think you're all in, it's like a little bit later you realize you're like on another level and you're like, man, I was just fucking playing around a little bit ago.
But that's a good thing, man, because it means you're learning, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. You're learning new things and new tools to trade, but you're learning and you're like, man, I gotta stop being a bitch. Like, yeah. I was like, you think you're about it, you think you're in it, but you're not.
Yeah. Well, it makes you a better coach, though, too.
Because you know what that looks like.
Yeah, and you know how to skip all the other, like if you could go back and coach yourself now, I'm not going to ask that question because I hate that question, but if you could go back and do that, you know, it would be different.
Right.
You know, now granted, you may not have listened, you know, but it would be different. But it's how, when you're working with the people that you're working with now, you can see those things coming beforehand, you know, and, you know, some of those, it's a crazy thing to think about, you know, because things have so much stayed the same training wise, but so much is advanced as well, you know, where recovery modalities and all these things are almost, I think it's gone so far, it makes a lot of people just lazy, you know, to where they're not training as hard as what they actually should. But it's great for the people that have trained too hard to be able to see that you didn't need to do that. Right. You would actually be better if you do this. Where one of my theories that I've always had, and you can see this quite often, is you'll see people that will use like high frequency training and then they'll just switch over to a lower frequency if it's from 3 days a week to 2 days a week or whatnot. Then they make these huge gains. Let's say they go from 3 days a week to just once a week. They make these huge gains, like, man, my program sucked. It's like, no, actually, it's kind of like you just peaked for meat. You know, because this is what you kind of do.
Yeah, so now you've lowered your fatigue and you're actually able to express strength and you're like, oh, I got strong all of a sudden. Yeah. No, you're just not fucking tired anymore.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll just keep that, you know, then, well, what if I just did it every 2 weeks? You know, what if I just took all the accessories out? So then what they end up resembles just the opposite.
Every day is a squat bench.
Yeah, because they don't understand, you know, exactly how it all kind of plays in with all that. with the in your gym, are they mostly powerlifters?
Yeah, everyone's powerlifter.
Okay. And what age ranges do you have?
18 to... Do we count Bruce?
Do we count?
The 70.
You can't just say, do we count? Like, what's that mean?
66. But I'm
66.
I'm 43, so
I'm not counting you as the oldest person in our gym.
I was until Bruce came.
Oh, no, Bruce is 66. He's training for bench only masters records.
Okay.
But he's done a meet, so he's done a legit meet and stuff before.
All right, let's take a bathroom break, then we'll talk about how you work with those kids or work with that group.
All right.
Merck Health is a premium telehealth platform specializing in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. Are you looking to optimize your health in and out of the gym, improve recovery, sex drive, and quality of life? Have you tried speaking to your health professional about this and have gotten the cold shoulder, stereotyped, or just told it's part of getting older? You just go to americhealth.com/table talk, and you can create your own lab, or you can take labs that we've had set up for them, which are based upon the same labs that I've been doing over the last 15 years. Or you can use their guided optimization. With this, they'll put you in touch with a patient care coordinator, which is actually pretty cool because you get to sit down and speak to somebody that can understand what you're looking for from hormone optimization and the preventative medicine standpoint. After that conversation, they'll determine which labs that you should and which tests you should have done, and then from there, get the labs done. They'll review those labs with you and put you in touch with one of their hormone optimization specialists that can determine which supplementation that you should use over the counter or prescription. americhealth.com/table talk. The discount code is table talk.
Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Merck Health is a premium telehealth platform specializing in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. Are you looking to optimize your health in and out of the gym, improve recovery, sex drive, and quality of life? Have you tried speaking to your health professional about this and have gotten the cold shoulder, stereotyped, or just told it's part of getting older? You just go to americhealth.com/table talk, and you can create your own lab, or you can take labs that we've had set up for them, which are based upon the same labs that I've been doing over the last 15 years. Or you can use their guided optimization. With this, they'll put you in touch with a patient care coordinator, which is actually pretty cool because you get to sit down and speak to somebody that can understand what you're looking for from hormone optimization and the preventative medicine standpoint. After that conversation, they'll determine which labs that you should and which tests you should have done, and then from there, get the labs done. They'll review those labs with you and put you in touch with one of their hormone optimization specialists that can determine which supplementation that you should use over the counter or prescription. americhealth.com/table talk. The discount code is table talk. All right, so we're back. We were going to talk about, or what I said we were going to talk about, are the lifters in your gym. You got a range of from teenagers to Bruce, who does exist, by the way.
To Bruce.
Yeah, it's a bench only guy. So I assume that they're mostly beginners.
Yeah, to a degree. Actually, you did a table talk with one of them, Mike Hedleski. He goes to the gym now.
Okay.
So me and Mike have become very close throughout this last year or two. We all used to go to a CrossFit box that had his monolift in it called Iron Strong, and they kind of went under. And Mike had messaged me and was like, "Yo, really nice Elite FTS mono. Don't want to put it in storage. Could I move it to your gym? And I was like, dude, of course. I've been trying to get you over here forever. And then turns out everything worked out, and we found a space right by the warehouse door where it rolls up, so the handle will clear it. It's the only spot it will fit unless we cut out ceiling tiles.
Well, I think he's got one of the big signature ones too.
So it's the really big ones. But yeah, so we, Mike's definitely not a beginner. Mike's been doing this for a really long time. We have quite a few guys that are like 3 or 4 years in, and then probably the rest of them are more like their first and second years.
How do you go about, do you do the programming for them? Just how's this work?
I do a lot of programming for people, mostly like pretty cost efficient programming, just because like, some of them are college students, not a really big budget. Now I try not to really offering much coaching in the way of the gym, just because like, it impedes so much time on your own training. And of course, like, rather than setting up times, people will be like, hey, if you're in there, can you help, can we do our coaching session right now? And you're like in the middle of a, squat and stuff like that. So the answer is like no, because people don't organize time schedules like that. Plus our time that we're open in the gym, because I'm a school teacher, isn't, huge blocks throughout the day, and I'm not there all day. So it makes it a little difficult to do that. So mostly, if I'm coaching, it'll be guys who are doing like, we're all doing like not the same meet or anything, but we're all doing the same things together in a variations and stuff, but we're doing something together on prescribed days, or it'll be like programming strictly only.
Okay, how would define to me how you would define programming, coaching, and mentoring, just so we're on the same page.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. This is a topic I definitely would like to talk about. So I think one of the problems is so many people acknowledge coaching and programming as synonymous with each other, and that they always go together. And I don't think that's obviously true at all. Now, for a while, I used to coach, and I stopped coaching because it's fucking annoying and I get tired of people's bullshit. And so I strictly did only programming for a very long time. And so people will be like, oh, I'm coached by Travis. I'm like, no, you're not. You get programmed by me. Like, there's very distinct
that's
difference.
Sending the program to them, but are there adjustments being made with that?
Yes. Adjustments being made based on like requests, weak points, and I mean, occasionally we will train together, so I can acknowledge those in one-on-one sessions and things like that. But coaching would be more like literally like, I mean, I talk to my people probably every other day, video reviews, like we're doing the programming together, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Now I think so many people, I think one of the hardest things to do with coaching, especially when you're getting new people, is everyone wants to be special. And what I mean by that is most of them haven't established enough movement pattern and muscle mass to properly like engage a weak point, right? So, hey, I want X, Y, and Z on my program because I think I'm weak here. No, you're fucking weak everywhere because you just started. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people want like special me programming when you don't need that. There certainly is a time and place for that, but right off the bat, definitely not. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I think another new lifters things, they don't understand like rotational or ramping blocks where things don't drastically change for 3 rounds, 2 rounds, of 8 weeks, and they want to, why aren't all my accessories different all the time? I'm like, because then you can't fucking actively track and build upon them. Like if we're switching everything over and over and over again. So I mean, I explain a lot with that with coaching. I don't charge a whole lot, just because like, it's not my main source of income, and I've never really been about it for like the money or try to make a living from it. Plus, I mean, just interacting with other people who I do know as coaches and, hear about and see what they do for clientele, just charging people, like fucking stealing from people, man, like an arm and a leg for like nothing, dude. Like I'll see other people's program and I'm like, bro, I could have typed this out for you on a fucking Google Doc while I was taking a shit and sent it to you, and here's your weekly program. And like, you know what I mean? It's not thought out. It's not detailed. It's not, I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I think another new lifters things, they don't understand it's nothing I would pay for.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's vastly different too, right?
Yeah.
So one person may actually give a shit and be trying to do it right. This one of the complaints I've had with the whole industry is there's no incentive for somebody to do it right. Let's put it that way, because
that's
if
a good point.
you know if the average cost is $200 per month, and you work as just a personal trainer in a gym, you may be charging $50, $75 per hour, right? So, you know, how much time at $250 per month can you actually devote to a person?
Right.
You know, you break that down by hourly wage, you know, there's not very much, but that's the highest. Well, I don't think it is, but the market will say that's about the highest that people are going to go. So some people are going to get fed up and frustrated because this is taking 3 hours per week per client, and at 12 hours, that's like $10 an hour, you know, whatever it breaks down to, you know, for that. My math sucks, by the way, because it's not $12. Those listening, I just admit.
It's okay. I'm an English teacher. I'm super not offended right now at all.
But on the flip side of it, you're going to get people who are basically just sending a copy and paste out of a Word document. It probably isn't even a Word document. They don't take that much time. It's a notepad document.
Yeah, I've seen this. That
they're copying and pasting and sending it out without a second thought. Whereas, how does an industry grow and not get cannibalized, you know, by Apple Fit, you know, or just any online service?
Or that, and those people who get a hold of coaching programs from people who do care.
Yeah.
And take the time and then just, you know, fucking manipulate them and send them off, oh, here's your new program, like, you know, passing them down the line.
Oh, I didn't think about that, yeah.
Taking a price from it, you know. And me and Jess have both known people do that with our programs. I've had people peddle my programs before.
Interesting. So now it's just, yeah. So there's another problem. Like, so every industry's got problems where that's programming. To me, coaching would fall in the same as what you defined it with. There's more personal interaction. There's reviewing. You know, there's dialogue. There's narrative, and I don't know how that even works.
It's also check-ins too. I mean, like, that's when you would ask more too about, like, you know, rate of fatigue, sleep, nutrition, things like that. Outside factors playing in on their ability to perform the lifts versus, like, if I'm programming, like, programming is programming. Like, I'm not gonna hit you up and be like, how was your day? Did you drink your water?
Yeah.
Like, it's programming, you know what I mean? And I think programming does well for certain people. And when you talk about coaching, you also talk about people. I think we talk more about accountability, because a lot of people want to coach for the simple fact that they literally have to report to someone.
Yeah.
You know, I've known advanced athletes. I'm like, dude, you're not stupid. Like, if I gave you a program, you would do just as good. Right?
Yeah.
And who know a lot of all the, I'm not saying they wouldn't benefit from me coaching them. I'm saying they know enough where, like, the price bump might not be worth it. But they're like, and I've had this conversation with numerous people, it's the accountability. Like, they want, I feel like this is a bad phrasing, they want their hand held. Like, they want someone to check in with. Like, it makes them feel better about the progress, right?
Yes.
Imagine, like, a little, and I know this, it's so hard to phrase these things and not sound like a complete fucking dick. Like, I always imagine the little kid at the community swimming pool, and they're about to do a fucking cannonball. You know that motherfucker can do a cannonball anyway. But you're the parent, so he's like, Dad, watch me.
Yeah.
And you're like, the cannonball is fucking awesome. You know what I mean? So it's like they want that measurement of not only accountability, but, like, some people have that personality trait as a people pleaser. They want to do something for them, but they also want to know it's going to coincide with you, right? They want to know your praise. They want to know if you approve or if you don't approve, right? And I think where the only downside of that is when you get over appraisers, right? You get people who, you know, slap you on the ass, go get them, Tiger. That was great for everything as a coach. And I'm like, you're not being coached. You're getting gold stickers. right? You're getting smiley faces on your paper that you drew.
Yeah.
Right? You're not being coached. You're not being criticized. You're not being techniques. You're not told to change anything. That's not coaching. And that's what got me frustrated for so long. Is like I would have bad interactions with people while I was coaching, and they would be like, well, I just can't ever, do things right. And I'm like, this is part of coaching. Like, you're paying me to help you mold you into a better lifter and athlete. Like, why would you... Like, what part of that made you think, like, I wouldn't criticize you and try to make you better? This isn't about being your friend. It's about making you better. And I think a lot of people lose that.
Yeah.
Especially in their younger years, like that first or second year lifter.
Yes. I also think that there's a lot of people that like to be able to say, my coach is... ...
Yeah.
Or my coach says ... And it doesn't matter what level lifter it is, because normally if I meet somebody for the first time, and usually within the first 15 minutes, I'm already told who their coach is, right? And I don't even care, but I'm already told. And I don't understand, why. But I guess it would fall back to when I was a personal trainer. I'm sure my clients, 20-some fucking years ago, were like, well, my personal trainer is... so it's that same thing.
Yeah.
The part with coaching when it's in person that I think is very hard to replicate, and maybe technology will help, down the line, wearable technology and stuff like that, is if you got a group of lifters and you guys are all squatting on a certain day, you can tell within 3 or 4 minutes after somebody walks in if they're kind of on point, not on point, if something's wrong, something's going on at home, if they're fighting with their girlfriend or fighting with their boyfriend.
Absolutely.
I mean, the nonverbals are just screaming.
You're going to see what's going to make or break that session immediately.
Yeah, and you can make corrections really, really fast.
Yeah. Not wait till, and we had just this conversation, not till... Actually, I might as well just say that. Funny you said that. So a guy, I don't know who it was like a burner account. Some guy had made a shitty remark about me on your post. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about like a group chat where we were, analyzing people's videos and stuff. Now, this coach, who I greatly respect, is very bold and outspoken. He had asked me to be another set of eyes because he likes me as a lifter. He's like, hey, why don't you come in my group chat with my guys I coach, give me an extra set of eyes, and you can criticize, help, make people better. And so I did that. Now, because of who this coach is, I thought most of the time when you get a coach, you want to say who's your coach, like you were saying, but also you generally agree with a lot of their standpoints. You know what I mean? You wouldn't select a coach that you're just like, completely moralistically is total opposite field. So I thought his group would be have a little more oomph, and it was a very small percentage of those, right? And so when I would, people were making excuses and stuff, I would, let them know what's up. And I was like, if you have and this is where this comes to your conversation, talking about in-person training, guys would say, well, I had a long day at work. I needed to feel the weights. And then you look at their videos and they're all overshot. Because they need to feel something. You take the aggression out, fuel, and just miss all their shit. And then I would call them on it. I'm like, this looks like dog shit. Like, you're not applying any of the cues we talked about. You're just in there yanking on your dick because you had a bad day at work. Everyone has bad days at work. Everyone's got shit going on. It shouldn't impact your training like that and give you an excuse to blow off your percentage or RPE because it was a rough day.
Like blow off, like going higher?
Yeah.
Okay, because I would interpret feel the weights like you're warming up to feel if it should be lower, not the other end.
Oh,
of the
no,
spectrum.
I'm talking like when they're like,
it.
I need to feel something, like it was like
on.
heavy. Yeah, exactly. So, so I basically said that, come on, but I said it in a much more aggressive way. And so I got told I was a royal asshole, and that I had people make comments like, who does this guy think he is, like just being pissed off at me. And so I told the coach, I was like, look, dude, I really appreciate you letting me in here, but this just isn't for me. And so I left, and we all just got laughing because we saw that comment on your thing, and I knew exactly what it was about. But that's my thing when we talk
this was
about
on my thing or the elite one?
It was on yours when you first released like my photo.
Okay.
But that's my thing when we come back to what you were talking about with the in-person sessions. Like, in-person sessions, you can save that kind of stuff because you visually see that.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't have to wait till afterwards to know they had a bad day and they were going to fuck around and do something stupid.
Yeah.
Whether negate the workout completely or way overshoot their percentages, right? You can kind of put a damper on that immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that whole scenario comes into play because it made me think of that occasion, just because it's like, okay, so if I was in person, you know, this interaction wouldn't even gone down. It would have been a totally different avenue if I was in person. You know what I
There's
mean?
more context.
Exactly.
It matters.
It does matter. It matters. It matters. And I think the whole thing too is like, even with technology and, you know, moving forward with like videos and how people are doing online coaching, like even with the words, like, I mean, and I'm sure you've gotten this too, like it's so easy to not be able to pick up on like, you know, it's so easy to text somebody and not pick up on like intended inflections and words and, you know, you were joking, but someone thinks you're mad at them.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
and that's the same thing with coaching. Like I could say something jokingly and like someone would be like, dude, my coach like fucking hates me.
Yeah.
But it's not the truth. It's just like, I think that those kind of limitations, along with like what you're talking about, the one-on-one quick problem solving, is totally missing out of the equation.
Yeah, and I mean, you're an English teacher. I mean, your background's deeply in English.
Right.
Words matter. You know, context matters a lot.
I wish more people said that. It makes me feel good.
Well, it does. I mean, I could sit here and say, man, that was great set, dude. And
Yeah,
you're
anyone can do that.
I'm sarcastic as fuck, right? And you're like, or you could be like, thank you, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, no, actually, it sucked ass, you know. And but that's where text is just, it's so weird, you know, to figure.
That's why we play rule of thumb in my gym. If I don't say anything to you, it means it didn't suck.
Yeah.
If it did suck, I'll actively tell you it was fucking bad and like let you know.
Yes.
But if I don't say anything, it means it was fine.
Yeah.
So,
I get
so
that.
you can't mix up the words.
No,
you know
I
what
get that. I mean, I'm perceived as an asshole just everywhere I go from the time I was in fucking high school. So it doesn't change, you know. And it's weird, but you got to understand it. But it doesn't transfer to text or messaging and you know, all the other kind of stuff.
And it's like I get so mad. Like I make story posts all the time. My friends love to tease me about this. Like I'll have my friends text me that I live with and be like, hey, you'll be proud of me, I read today. Because like one of my biggest things I blow up on my stories all the time, like I wish people would just fucking read.
Yeah.
Like no one it's such a lost art. Like not only me because I'm a writer, but like everyone expects, especially high level lifters, to just like give, but it's like, dude, no one here was shot out of the womb and just knew all this stuff. Like we fucking read, we watch videos. Like my first thing I do every morning is I fucking read, right? And if I can't figure it out through reading it, I'll go try to find video examples of something to help me like compare textual learning with visual, right? Because that's how you do it as a fucking teacher. But like I don't understand the lost concept of reading anymore.
And here I am, man. I'm the person that years ago was saying that, you know, no question's a bad question because it may be I may be asked the same question 100 times, but it's the first time you ever asked me.
I remember you saying that.
And I did say that. And I'm not going to go back on the fact that I ever said that, but I did say that. You know, that I respect being asked more than somebody just Googling. And I did say that, but I'm changing my stance on that because it's the number of times that I get a lot of DMs, so I used to answer all my DMs, all of them. So if it was a training question, no matter what it was, I was answering all of them for years. And then in 2020, that shifted a little bit. There's other reasons for that, but during that time, it's so frustrating because I would answer with an article link. And sometimes it's not easy to go find the article. It's not hard, right? It takes a couple of minutes, right? I'm on my phone. I'm fucking trying to find it, you know, on Google or wherever it is. And first off, what article was it? Trying to remember. Then this isn't the one. It may take 3-4 minutes. It's not a huge period, but it's 3 or 4 minutes. And then I would send it to somebody, and then immediately they would ask me, a question immediately. Like, no fucking way they read this. No fucking way. And I'm like, motherfucker, like, you can't even take the 3 or 4 minutes that it took me to go find this to read it. And it's like, oh, I don't want to. Some people would even say things like, oh, I don't want to read that, man. Just tell me what I need to do.
Then you don't deserve to know it.
Well, I can't. It's a fucking DM.
Yeah.
With no context. And like, here's an article, and sometimes it'd be a blog, not long. And so there were a couple times I'm like, you know what? I'm going to find the shortest possible thing, like a micro blog, like an Instagram post, which are actually harder to search for.
They are, yeah.
They're a motherfucker to search for. And send that just to see. Same thing. And I'm like, man, come on, like, you can't.
It's like a 60-second clip and like 120 character like caption. You couldn't fucking.
These are just, this was before Reels, man.
Yeah,
this is just like
quick stuff.
A microblog. It was just a fucking image, and here it is. And I'm like, this is crazy, man. Let alone writing, which is another thing I could vent about. Because maybe I'm just fucking old, but I think they're both important. Reading for a lot of reasons, and writing. Admittedly, I'm not as good now. I used to write a blog post every day in my notepad. I used to post blogs every day, but I write just to write. And I'm not a great fucking writer by any stretch of the imagination, but just putting words down helps you, I think, become more intelligent, at least think more, question things. I mean, you tell me, like, what is the importance today? Because you're an English teacher, and this is going to be biased, yes, but it's still fucking true. What is the importance today of kids learn, or just even adults, learning how to write their thoughts?
It's extremely important, and I'm glad you added adults, just because a lot of the parents I reach out to, it's the same issues. I can tell by the way you're replying emails, like your vocabulary, your skills at reading, like those kind of things are not built, or something that you practice at home that is easily, I can see the same not, good habits forming in your child. Right. And that sucks. You never want to tell a parent that, but it's so painfully obvious, and I work at a high needs, high poverty school district. So, many of the parents won't even like call me back or anything. So like now I try to do like the Google Voice, where you can send, like, you pick a number and you can text them. So like maybe people answer text versus voicemails and stuff, and you'd be surprised still now. But like one of the biggest things in the classroom is like basic skills such as reading comprehension and the ability to even like list things in like a logical order are just gone. And so like one of the biggest things I constantly wonder is, like, I get 10th graders and I'm like, how in the world did you make it to me and not know how to do some of this stuff? And I'm talking, dude, rudimentary base stuff, like. And even at their age with technology, like every kid in my school has like a Chromebook, like a little laptop, and like don't know how to export a file. And I'm like, dude, you're like 15. Your whole life is governed around technology and social media, and you don't know how to do basic functions like that. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And I think one of the big things, like we're talking about, where like you take your time and you find an article and send it to them, right? Very similar to what I do, because, we're working on an argumentative paper right now. And so, and I'll choose a topic and I'll do a topic with the kids. So like, I'll literally do a teacher exemplar at the same time as my students. So we'll do it piece by piece, and then you have all the puzzle pieces, you put them together. Yeah. All right. Make it very simple. I don't ever hand them a problem to like, good luck, do in 3 days. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to get success with that, obviously. So my topic this year I chose was tattoos, and the argument was why the tattoo age requirement should be 21 and there's no exemption for parent signature. So you can't even get a tattoo if your parent signs. So all the kids, of course, look at me, because I want to make one argumentative. They're like, look at me, and they're like, you're gonna argue that? I'm like, yeah, man, I didn't get my first tattoo until I was 22. And so I go through, but when we start finding sources, right, we start finding research articles, things that are going to back up and prove their reasoning to me, they simply don't know how to find it. So when you tell me, you know, you have a guy particularly ask you a question and you respond with a link to a very well thought out article and they don't read it, it's no different than my 10th graders. Like, I'll lead them to research articles, but they don't know how to like comprehend, how to take away, how to utilize things to back up their reasoning or evidence. It's just like another sheet of paper you put in front of them. And I think because of how fast technology has escalated their abilities to learn stuff via media, that these things feel very foreign and obsolete to them, right? So for example, a very easy comparison would be like, look at a recipe book, right? My mom's giving me recipe books, right? It's very easy. You could open up to a certain tab, you know, proteins, bunch of chicken dishes, find the one you want, look at the grocery list, go to the grocery store, blah, 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 tell you how to cook, right? But now you can go on TikTok and this fancy motherfucker will throw it together in 85 seconds on a TikTok and a kid will watch that but won't read the same thing if it was written out. You know what I mean? And so it's turned, I think, this younger generation into complete visual learners. Like, even though you've had visual learners, you know, people who respond better to auditory or oral learning, like, because of the escalation in that one area of media, it has really driven kids that were otherwise other learners into that same category. So now we have this giant influx of basically like visual media only learners, right? Whether they were born that way or whether they just kind of hopped along with the cultural movement towards that. And so now it's like anything you don't provide a visual example with, it's just so over a child's head now. And it's something I've watched for like a year or two now. And it's been going on longer than obviously, but like in my classroom the last 2 years especially. And of course, COVID escalated that, you know, because then it was pushed to strictly online learning. And so like, you know, if you didn't attach a video with whatever they were reading, they weren't fucking doing that. It's just like an outward refusal of work. So I think that because of that push, we've really taken away from their ability to read and to write, and that the education system, unfortunately, is so incredibly outdated, man. We're talking like, you know, we're still following curriculum plans and things built in the 19th century, and we're like, what, fucking quarter of the way into the 21st, and we're still rolling with the same things that were principles of the 19th century. You're still rolling with those same principles, but look at how many things have changed drastically. Yeah. And no one's keeping up with that. No one's thought to like reimagine that process or reimagine what the kids would respond to in this. Instead, they're just trying to just random plug and plays with curriculum, and it's fallen on its face. Yeah. Like we tried one this year that's basically has everything organized online to make it more like technology friendly. Kids hate it. Can't stand it. I even have kids tell me they'd rather do like pen and paper work over this. And you'd be surprised. You're like, but your whole lives are computer and technology. Why would you not rather gravitate towards that? And it's not because of the technology. It's because of what medium it is. Right? It's not the actual... No one's saying they learn better on a keyboard and a screen. They're learning better through visual representation, no matter what that is. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of education system is getting confused on, right? They see, oh, kids text on TikTok all day. Fucking give them a laptop. That'll solve it. It doesn't, because it's not the same way they're learning. It's just the devices resemble each other. It's so they're getting the information through a similar like keyboarded device, but they're not learning the same way. Yeah, but what I wonder with that is, and not just with the kids, but with most people I know, is when I write or have to write, I have to think. Right? So for me to write, I have to think. Unless I'm copying, something directly, I have to think. If I'm watching something,
I don't always have to think unless you're asking me questions that are going to make me have to think, right?
So while that 60 seconds is on, you're blank screening it. You're just there watching.
Yeah, so if you lose the ability to think, that's not good, right? Because then, I mean, I like the idea that you're talking about an argumentative assignment based upon tattoos, because I think, you know, people have lost the ability to disagree on things and understand that they still agree on a lot of other things. You know, it's with the powerlifting and political stuff, we may disagree on certain things. I don't know, but that doesn't mean that we have to hate each other because we would disagree on a squat depth definition.
I literally had this conversation with a kid on Facebook the other day.
Right.
A local guy that I know. And I was like, just because like you don't agree with my opinions in the sport doesn't change the fact that we're trying to grow the sport and make it better.
Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Who does not want that?
So why the fuck can't we, like, you don't have to hate me because you didn't agree that I don't fucking like this whatever.
No, but if they shut down the dialogue,
yeah,
and there's no narrative, right, then it goes nowhere, right? If they don't have the ability to think, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't allow you to even be able to express your opinion. And on another level of this is, just the other day I had somebody that was going through some shit, and I told them, you know, they're having a hard time sleeping, stuff like that. I'm like, are you just writing down your thoughts before you go to bed? Get them out of your head, put them on a page, you know, just let you go to bed. And just write your thoughts down. You know, just get a book, write them down. Don't fucking show anybody. You don't have to show anybody what you write. That's your story. You write that. Nobody needs to see that. Just you. Hide it under your mattress, you know, fucking put it in a safe. I don't give a shit what you do, but just get it out of your head, put it on paper. All right. Fortunately, you know, they know how to write. I don't know what they're going to put in there, but it's probably some shit that they need to get out of their head and start to deal with a little bit. Writing allows people to do that. He can't voice dictate that. He can't talk to himself on the way to the gym about that. I'm sure he could talk to a therapist about that, which would be the great thing, but how many people are going to actually do that? You see, that's a power of writing that I think people just completely dismiss, is the ability to put words on paper that are in your head that somebody may never read is going to help a lot, you know, for a lot of people. And that's probably one of the reasons why I force myself to keep writing microblogs just myself, right? Because sometimes it's stuff I will never post, but I just had to word vomit, you know, whatever it was out, you know, and that's disheartening, you know, to hear that isn't happening. Or let's say you don't even have the skill set to do that, to just simply write words, if it's text in a notepad, to deal with your own shit, you know, because everybody can say, speak to a teacher, whatever it's going to be. I mean, you work with a lot of these kids. How many of them actually will do that? Very, very few, even if you reach out to them. Exactly. So what mechanisms do they have? Writing can help. I think. This is your area, you know. Yeah, no. I mean, it's not biased. Writing has been used as a form of therapy for just so many different situations. And I mean, I would strongly encourage that. And it's really cool because, like, a couple times a year, you know, not always, but, you know, you will get a few kids that are like, hey, I really like this assignment. Like, this helped me. And then that's when, of course, you can be like, well, hey, I'm going to give you this journal. I want you to continue this, you know? You don't have to show it to me. You know, write what you need to write, you know? If you like writing poetry, write poetry. You just want to write thoughts. Like, anything gets better. And I have the kids the same way. When me and I had an art teacher last year. The last 2 years, me and him ran the after-school arts program. And so, like, we would paint with the kids and stuff like that. And they would come in and watch me make, like, new tattoo stencils for people and stuff like that. But, I mean, I told them, like, even that, like, visualizing what you need to get out and turning that into some form of either written word art form or, you know, literal paint art form is just like
helpful on another level. And, like, kids didn't really understand it until a couple of them like gave that a shot. They're like, I feel better. I was like, yeah, man, like every Tuesday and Thursday I look forward to just coming out and sit next to you, and we can sit in complete silence and just do art, and you'll feel better by the end of it. And a bunch of them thought I was bullshitting them. They all were like, this fucking makes sense. I'm like, yeah, I know, just got to give it a shot.
How did you end up teaching them in the districts that you're in?
So my scholarship through University of Delaware, let's see, because I worked back. It's difficult. I worked backwards. So what happened was I had a master's in British literature from Salisbury University. But to be a secondary education teacher, you needed a continuing teaching license in the state. So I got this involved in a University of Delaware program called D3TP, and so it was for teachers who already had their master's degree, like a higher level of education than you needed for high school. So you only need your bachelor's for high school, and could essentially work backwards while they worked during the school year. So I acquired my other 2 years teaching license while I was already teaching at the high school.
Got it.
So, but part of the agreement was you had to teach a minimum of 3 years at a high needs school in order for the scholarship to be met. And if you backed out or quit before then, you would have to pay the money back. So that's
But you've been there longer.
9 years.
So why'd you stay?
I love it. I did. I'd say like my first 5-6 years were incredible. Like, I knew this is what I wanted to do. But as education has gotten worse, as the teacher shortage has gotten worse, they're starting to really pigeonhole what educators are allowed to do. And not only from taking a power away from them as far as like consequences for kids and stuff, but what we can do with like the curriculum and stuff. So like, for example, this year, I picked out none of what we read. The whole program was paid for up front for the curriculum and the online boarding thing I told you about with the Chromebooks. And like any of the kids that are, misbehaving, which is a large majority of our school, you have to like call home first before you can write a referral, which most of the parents don't return your calls, so then nothing is done. And just like, it's just a pattern that never seems to end. And it's like, how do you structure a place of learning when like your conditions on one side worsen and your power to do something about it lessen at the same time? And you're just, this gap is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so like, they had a really big teacher turnover a couple years ago, and I have a feeling they're going to have another one. So it's just very rough. A lot of teachers quit very quickly. Most of my kids for 12th graders had me as a 10th grade teacher too, so that works in my favor because they kind of know who I am. And so I don't really get I get quite a few issues, but I would say probably slightly less than like other teachers. A lot of kids tend to like my class, hate writing and reading, but like me as a person. So like, make it work as far as English goes. But it's so hard to want to encourage students to like be a teacher. Like, it's not one of those professions, and like the kids see it, they see how stressed out we are, they see how bad the other kids are, and like, so the kids who do possibly could make that difference and could be educators are like, dude, you're a good guy and I see the shit you go through, like I don't want to do that. What happens when you get enough people saying I don't want to do that? It's gonna be bad. Yeah, really bad. So I feel like that's kind of the stance most secondary education people are in right now.
It's like you're screaming in a hurricane.
Yeah, and the hurricane never ends. Yeah. So it's just and like the more observations every year. Like, I mean, dude, I'm on year 9. Like, year 9. Like, you still got to check on me that many times on year fucking 9? Like, I'm already, you already have veteran status as a teacher, so... And that's the thing. It's like, no matter how experienced or how many times you prove you can do this correctly, they'd never leave you alone. I'm like, why would you want that? You know, I want to feel like I'm making a difference, not doing a dog and pony show for a bunch of people with clipboards to get paid more than me.
Yeah. Do you think you're doing that with your gym?
What do you mean?
Making a difference?
I feel like so. Yeah.
It seems like that's the biggest quest that you're on, you know, with your charity, with the teaching, with the gym, and with the coaching, is to make a difference. When I stop feeling that I'm making a difference, that's when I toss it in. So to answer our question way back, when we're talking about even me as a lifter. But how do you define making a difference, though?
I think that's a tricky question. I think it's not only your experience. I think it's experience through others. It's how they're perceiving it too. Like, are you changing their lives? Do they know you're changing their life? Like, can they see those ripples of the decisions you make changing things around them for the better, and encouraging them to do the same? That's what I think changing is. Mm-hmm. Like, when you can visually see your choices affecting other people in a way that they also start trying to do that as well.
But it still comes down to, if it's one student out of 100, is that measurable? Is that enough?
Yeah.
Right, and it's the same thing with the powerlifting. If it's one person that powerlifting helps change,
is that enough to keep you going?
Is it? I'm asking you, is it enough?
I think selfishly, it depends. Depends on who that person is.
Yeah.
It depends on how much that person needs it. I think there's different levels to needing something.
How so?
You know, is it in need of you to make choices to help them stay in doing a hobby or stay in doing a job, or, you know, thicker choices like staying alive? Like, is it that kind of difference? You know, what parts of you are they depending on? You know, like how do they perceive you as someone that's helping them? And I think it's like, it's hard to have your own accountability in something like that you're openly admitting yourself that you're staying in this for one person, you know, or
but it's also hard to make a statement of, as soon as I don't think that I'm helping anybody, I'm out.
Oh yeah, and I'm not saying that's an easy decipher. Yeah, it's not. It's not at all. And I mean, we could sit here and play devil's advocate all day with it.
Well, I know, that's why I am. Yeah. You know, because these are the same thoughts that I have.
That you often have. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, how do you define this?
Is it definable?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I just come back to, I'm not going to let the world change me. That's my easy fucking out. You know what I'm saying? You know,
when you say it like that.
But I mean, if you were to press me as we're kind of doing here, I don't know. You know,
like if we both took pieces of paper, like, could we physically write that out? I don't know if we could. Like, when we say literally define it, could you?
I don't know if we can, because I think that throughout history, people have tried to write it out and have done the best that they can. You know, philosophy, you know, you know, all these different rabbit holes that you go down and you read it and you're really interested in it, but then your own mind starts getting all fucked up.
Yeah.
Because, like, what did they mean when they wrote that?
Yeah, and how much influence do you take away from something like that, and then reframe it on yours? And you're like, well, do I think that, or do I think that?
Yeah. And then what did that word mean back then? Because I know what it means now.
Right. Yeah.
It's like fucked up.
when you try to change and help people and you end up fucking your own head up.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and is it helping you?
Probably not.
You know, it's that I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, is it helping you more than it hurts?
or helping them more than it hurts. Like, can you withstand that, knowing that it's making something better for someone else? I think that's more like the real question. How much could you endure knowing that it was helping that other person just as much?
Well, it's my other default is the way that I approach life, and I've said this on several podcasts, is I'm going to take care of myself first, physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's my first priority above everything else. Because if I can do that, then I can take care of my family. Right? If those aren't right, I can't take care of my family.
It's true.
I will not be the best father and husband I can be if those aren't right. Right? So then after that, with the family, then the third is going to have to be my business. Because it's the third priority I have. Do I have any energy after all that? Because if I do, then yeah, I'll worry about it. And then what difference can it make, after that? But as long as I keep my priorities there, it's a little bit easier to wrap my head around all that, because at least it puts me in a position to where I can ask myself, is this coming at the expense of those others? Is this coming to the expense of my physical health, my mental health, my spiritual health?
Right.
Yes, it is. Okay, do I need to do this? Like, it's as if this adding value or taking value, is it adding more or taking more what?
Makes it much more easily measurable in a yes and no type state.
Big time.
Yeah.
And it also makes it so much easier to say, I don't need to read the comments on my Instagram, right? Because does that add? Does that take? Where does it? And it's fluid. It's going to change based upon obviously the needs of all those other things with that. But I mean, outside of that, there's still a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's sometimes I wish there was no more time after those two things. It'd be so easy, right?
It would be. Yeah. To not have to manage anything else.
Yeah, but it is. But there's a reason why we all do what we do. And for me, the training's a big fucking part of it, though. It's a big part. I think it works its way into a lot of our lives.
I think that's a good way to express that, because I think, a common misconception becomes, when people say stuff like training isn't everything, or powerlifting isn't your whole life, or powerlifting shouldn't be your whole life. But I think when you objectively put it like that and call it powerlifting, or, bodybuilding, whatever your avenue is, the way you say it, when you say, is it helping me mentally, physically? Is it taking care, is that hobby taking care of me so I can take care of other people? That changes things.
Yeah.
Because people don't look at it that way. They're like, oh, this is your hobby. You can't make that your whole person. But this is making me able to do the other things.
Yes. And I would question them back. Do I have the right to be able to tell you what's important for you? Because if you're able to tell me, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's just a hobby, well then does that give me the right to be able to come back to you and say whatever you love and whatever's helping your physical, mental, and spiritual health? I just think as a hobby, do I have the right to be able to tell you that's just a hobby?
And if it's doing all three of those, I highly doubt it might be a hobby to you or me.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not a fucking hobby to them.
Yeah.
Not if it's changing those three in that, high level of severity.
Yeah. And a lot of that is just they don't understand, basically how we see it, how we perceive it. It's just different. I know Mike Israel said on the podcast, kind of fucked me up a little bit too. They don't mean any harm. When they see that, most of them really don't mean any ill intent or harm. They actually probably mean to help you, because they see that as, man, this is destroying you. Fucking look at you. You blew your quads out. You tore your tricep out. You did this. It's fucking you up. It's destroying you. I don't think they mean ill will by saying this hobby is what it is. I just think they don't know what it means.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of all that, and what, as you talked about earlier, what price you're willing to pay for that, and that changes. It's fluid too, right? It changes over a period of time, and then what it is changes over a period of time.
Yeah, I think definitely me, even through, so how long have you been powerlifting, dude?
I did my first meet in 82. My last one was like 2004 or something like that. I'd have to look that one up.
It's almost been 20 years since you did a meet.
Yeah. Wow. No, and I'm not going to bullshit you. When I stopped, it was a huge part of my identity, and I hated it. I fucking hated it with a passion. And then it was part of my business, which made it even worse.
Yeah,
right?
It's like you're trying to come to reconcile the fact that you're trying to move that away, but it's like this.
No, there's no doubt I was going through all the stages of grief even before I finished. You're probably doing it now, like bargaining and all this, all this other.
Well,
shit.
I could do this if it makes it feel better.
Yeah, and I think that if I would have known something then that I do now, I wish I would have known that was part of it. That I was going through that,
right?
And it would have made a little bit of a difference because I lost, and I also, this is why I push it so much. I also lost sight of what it's really about, right? Because when the only meets I'm going to were nationals and top meets, and I'm not even going to local meets, and all I'm ever around it's West Side, man. Everybody I'm around is willing to actually die, literally die. For the PR and for the sport, myself included. No harsh talk, willing to fucking die. If I would have fucking died at that time doing that, I can even say now, good. At least I would have fucking went out doing what I love to do. So willing to do that. But I lost the fucking teenage kid that fell in love with it in the first place. And it took me a while to find it again. Right, and it did, man. It fucked me up because it defined the whole sport. Kind of like the conversation we had earlier. Yeah. Because I'm a meet director. I'm running the federation for fucking IPA or whatever it was, which really wasn't doing anything except a title. But that's all the. God, it's the same shit nothing's changed. It's just different communication means. Same crap, and you're caught up in all this bullshit. And it took a while. And I went to, it was a local meet, and I watched somebody pull a PR, which not a huge fucking PR, man. It was a fucking PR. And it was on the deadlift. And then I watched another one pull a PR. We're talking 350, 400. We're not talking big fucking numbers, man. But those deadlifts that you could tell, it was hard. And they had to make that decision. I'm finishing this motherfucker, and pulled through it. And I walked out of there like, man, this, what the fuck was I thinking this is what it's about. This is 95% of the sport. It's not this other stuff. It's not, and I think that a lot of lifters self-sabotage themselves at the higher level because they forget that it stops being fun. And when it stops being fun, they're stressed out all the time and they can't fucking recover. And then one meet becomes another bad meet. It becomes another bad meet. Then the excuses, there's excuses at the fucking wing hill, about all that. And and it's a good time because now they can actually find a way outside of like working in strip clubs to be able to pay while they're competing and other jobs. But at the same time, I think it's a bad thing because they have other ways to be able to pay for the training outside of educating themselves. And I think that's a big pitfall too.
Yeah.
Especially when the lack of the education that you're talking about to begin with, it doesn't just stop at the need school. No. It's everywhere. No. I had a really good friend of mine tell me, I don't have the statistics to prove this, so I'm just going off a friend of mine that's a doctor that's been around for a long time that told me that he read something that even doctors don't read anything after they graduate. Fucking MDs. Right, so you can have an MD that's been in practice for 15 years and they've read nothing since they've graduated. That's epidemic.
It's funny too, because you see a lot of PTs like that.
Yeah.
Still recommending rice and super outdated shit like that.
Thank God, for meatheads that are willing to explore the outer edge.
And isn't that flipped?
Yeah.
You got the meathead guys reading and the PTs and people who went to school, they're like, oh, we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works. And
I've had PT straight up be like, hey, are you icing that? I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe at first to negate the swelling, but afterwards, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild how that works, though.
It is, but it's when you, to go back to what you were saying about your students, when you have a knowledge for education and thirst for education, you're going to find a way, right? So you tear both quads out, you want to be able to come back. What, are you going to not find a way?
Yeah. That's not like an easy road to navigate and just like sitting there on your own. Like, you have to read, you have to talk, you have to experience other methods of programming and different things to make this work again.
Yeah.
It's not sitting on the couch on hopes and dreams. And I think that's the other thing why doctors are so used to that. You know what I mean? The average person, you do something like that, like, you're just going to sit there and feel bad for yourself. A lot of them don't even take the rehab seriously. Like, dude, I think, fucking third day out of surgery, I was already trying to walk.
Yeah.
Like, I was after it, man. I might not squat again, but I'm damn sure gonna fucking walk again.
Oh yeah. I mean, you gotta take care of that shit, bro.
Yeah.
But after the first step, then the second step. Actually, it's after you stand up from the toilet when it's actually at a close depth.
Yeah.
That's when you start thinking, "Oh, wait a minute."
Yeah. This might happen again.
You've gone from raw into, I want to say multiply, but the total is. What the total is unlimited, and I'm sure it's a band shirt type thing.
Yeah.
With that, do you think you're going to stay that route?
In multi, yeah, I'm back to a poly now.
Okay.
So I actually was going to use a poly at Freaks, but so I had lost obviously a shitload of weight in the hospital with my legs. So coming back, I was benching raw, and then I got back into a shirt. But I think I had lost close to 25 pounds in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started gaining all that weight back, the shirt I had didn't fit me anymore. So I was like, fuck, I'm not going to show up to my very first meet, multiply and be in a shirt that's like way too tight for my experience level and not be able to, fucking bomb out, not be able to touch. Plus I had a double ply F8 that, like I said, I've become really close with Rob and Tiff over there. And dude, while we're on that subject, cannot speak more highly about those two people. They're fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they've not only like rooted me on and fucking take care of me, they've given gift certificates for meets I'm hosting, fucking altered everything I own to fit my dumb ass. Like they've been amazing. So shout out to Rob and Tiff at F8 Customs. But I used one of their shirts, and that was the other reason I used it. Like, I really wanted to, because I knew they were live streaming and stuff, and like, I knew people were going to ask me about the shirt and stuff. So I was like, I wanted to be seen in that for them too. You know what I mean? To represent them, because they'd been fucking amazing to me. So yeah, I'm definitely sticking in multi and single. Probably bounce between both of those.
How was that transition for you?
From raw to multi?
Yeah, because I've seen the other. I've seen multi to raw. We've seen that story play out a lot. You don't see the story going the other way. It happens a lot, but you don't hear it a lot.
So my first couple of experiences in gear were all in single ply.
Yeah. And then what about stance, squat wise? Any things you had to change?
So I had to go wider.
Yeah.
I could still low bar and go wider because it took a little bit of pressure off my quads. I was really scared to put wraps back on. I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified to put wraps back on.
But you're sitting back more, right?
Yeah, it's just the sensation.
I get it. I get it.
Right on top of your scars, and like you get weird sensitivities in your knees now because like all the nerves trying to reattach and shit, and it's like half your knees hypersensitive, the other half can't feel shit. So I'm like, something's popping like on the one side, I don't even fucking know what's going on. And it's just fucking scary, man. But I got rather comfortable in that really quick. But I had a lot of hate from some guys in multiply because I wasn't doing it like traditional style. Like I wasn't like high bar, crazy wide stance, like sitting back. I was squatting more like how you could get away with more a raw style and like single ply. And I was doing that in like a LUP, and people were like throwing a fucking shit fit over it. So, and I mean, I understood the reasoning.
No, I get the reasoning.
You're not getting the most out of your suit, but I'm like, bro, like I can fucking squat again. Could you give me a minute? Could you give me a fucking second? Yeah, because I mean, it fucking blew out both legs, and then 7-8 months later, squat 733 in a meet. I was like, I'll fucking take that all day, no matter what stance it is.
Yep.
But my deadlift came back super quick, man. Deadlift, it was like fucking, it was crazy. It was like 12 weeks post-op, I'd pull 700 again. And I was wearing a single ply fusion. Now I try to get in a couple LUPs and go wide stance and do sumo, like to, leverage the style of the Brees and get more pop out of it. It just wasn't for me. My conventional was just so much fucking stronger, and I already had a huge advantage with that, so I was like, I'm not gonna fuck that up. So I found a fusion I really liked and just stuck with that.
Yeah.
But the transition wise, it was definitely weird. Because especially for me for bench. So for a raw bencher, I was always very close, right? A very close grip bencher. I was probably like thumbs on the knurlings out, so I was probably like within shoulder.
Okay.
So like for most raw meets, people would watch me and they're like, dude, you're out there like fucking close gripping.
Yeah.
Basically. And, of course, like when you don't know shit about gear, and nobody really lifts in gear where I'm at, so I was basically trying to learn all this myself. And I was in like a single ply katana, like with a close grip, like touching to a 2-board, and I was like, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I eventually got some friends and stuff to help me go wider and like, work my finger out a week at a time, so I get a wider and wider grip, and now I'm like max width. And really enjoying it. But the bench press was definitely my hardest thing, because I was always, super tight grip, flat back, like no arch, like so. And I'm pretty lean too. So when they were like belly up, I'm like, and they're like, bro, belly up. I'm like, yeah, I am.
No, they gotta tell you to inhale.
Yeah. No, I remember. So we had like this little multi seminar. At Black Flag in Smyrna, and Bruce and his wife had come down and they were checking, and so I like took my shirt off because I was about to put on a SDP, and like I had like an 8-pack.
Yeah.
And Bruce looks at me and he's like, bro,
Yeah.
they ain't gonna fucking help you today.
No.
And I was like, yeah. And Aaron's like, I've been trying to tell a dude to eat ice cream, man.
Yeah.
So like I have gotten heavier and I've been enjoying and really like worked on technique in a shirt. And like I used to not be able to touch with like, up until like 500, and now I'm touching in like 3.
Okay.
So I'm like, I've greatly like altered like my technique and stuff to be able to do that, and gotten much more comfortable with between the wide grip and really creating an arch and belly up and staying in my traps. And actually Laura paid me a really good compliment the other day. She's like, your bench is beautiful. I was like, oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's,
like, all
no.
right.
I mean, if you're able to touch 3 and it's around a 5, you're that's good.
Yeah, so I was like, well, at least I'm not running the risk of bombing out already with a fucked up tricep.
Yeah.
So, and actually the tricep feels really comfortable in the shirt. So, and I made sure not to really like fuck with the sleeves, not hem them, like get as much length at them as possible for support. Because the one arm is still looser, obviously. I lost dude, the atrophy is so nuts with shit like that. Like
On your legs?
That and my arm. My arm was even shorter.
I forgot about
It was unreal, man. It was like 3 weeks, and I lost like 2-3 inches.
No, you just need to not look at all. You have to find a way to not look.
So we measured them.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and it was like, one was like 18 and a half, and the other one was 15 and a half.
Yeah, it's all flappy and shit.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's not good.
Got like the lunch lady bat wings.
No, I know this very well. Please, go on.
Yeah.
It's bringing back awful memories.
Yeah. So, yeah, but no, man, I honestly, I did my first 10 years raw.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely planning on doing my second 10 in gear. Like, and I've said this on a few other podcasts, but like being in gear has just totally like made me fall in love with the sport all over again. And actually, I think it made it a lot easier for me to be like, you know what, if I take a back step with the level of competitiveness, I'm okay with that, because now I'm learning a lot. Like, it's starting brand new. It's like I've never fucking lifted before, because in gear you have to relearn everything.
Oh yeah.
And if you've built shitty habits, not only are those shitty habits hard to break raw, they're fucking detrimental.
Yeah, well, your room for error is minimal.
Yeah. So, and I love that part of it. I love the technical aspect of it. So I've been working with a lot of friends, getting a lot of help. Of course, you're always going to have, for the most part, I would say like 98% of the geared community has been very welcoming Mm-hmm. And of course, I've had my 2%ers that are like old heads, like they'd rather fucking wrap their denim around their body and die in the coffin with it, and so they don't want to see anyone come in the sport. I've had a couple of guys like that.
What, because of the band shirt or because of
the band shirt, and just like because I didn't start off doing everything traditional style, like the wide stance and stuff. Like I had been experimenting with stuff that works for me.
Whatever.
But of course, like I've had guys like that.
Yeah.
And people who were like, hey, I'd love to like work with you and your wife and like teach you some stuff. And I was like, that'd be super cool, but you're total fucking dick about it. So regardless of how knowledgeable or awesome you are, like if you're gonna be an asshole, like I don't really want to be around you. So, but for the most part, I've had really awesome people like Amber, Leah, Lars helped me, all the guys in Black Flag, Smyrna, Bruce, like everyone's been super welcoming. The guys at Death Wish over at in Smyrna as well, or not Smyrna, I'm sorry, babe, where's Death Wish? Yeah, but what's Delco, right? Yeah, Delco. Sorry, I'm thinking of everyone competing, and Delco's competing today, so I'm mixing my names of places up right now. But everybody's been really, really supportive for the most part.
Was that different than what you expected?
Yeah, just because I'm so used to the Raw community.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Everyone in the Raw community is all fucking SBD everything, and who's got their curly hair with the fucking dangly earring, and just everyone who, I feel like everyone now, especially the younger generation that competes Raw, just thinks they're the hot shit right out the gate. Like, it's just not friendly anymore. It's really not.
Was it though when you came in?
Yeah, it's definitely grown in that aspect too. Yeah, like it's grown in popularity, of course, like we were talking earlier. But as far as like the attitudes and presence, and of course like social media is just like caused a huge influx of that. And actually, that was I think it was one of the articles I wrote for you, like one of the first times I really noticed it. And it was about being like, wouldn't it be a shame if you were just another fucking asshole with a total? Yeah. And it was just like my experience with the younger guys, but then how many of those younger guys were like looking up to you because you were older in the sport, and how cool it was to see them try to emulate that and pass that on to other people already at a young age. And then you were like, shit, that's how it's done. That's what's right. That's people who are passing things on, who are trying to emulate people they looked up to, who were passing things on. Yeah. And not these guys who just do one meet and are like deadlift specialists and think they're fucking hot shit now. Yeah. Now you're getting into the area where I feel like I'm screaming in a hurricane. Yeah, because, I'm sure. Yeah, because it's the whole reason I founded the company was for that, because everybody that ever helped me from the time I was fucking 12, in powerlifting, it was all geared. The Raw was, I'd have to look up the date, but I didn't have a choice. It was just all single ply that kind of migrated. But every gym I ever went to, was always welcoming, helpful, passing, and it changed my life. In every regard, which is why it's live, learn, pass on. I mean, there's a reason for that. It's just not a catchphrase. Right. It's what it is. I mean, the company is retail for that reason. We use the profits to pay for the education we put out. We're not, people will confuse us with some of these other brands and say, you're a competitor with this brand. Like, no, we're not. We're kind of like, in a fucked up way, we're kind of like Alex Jones, except instead of selling shitty ass supplements, we're selling equipment and all this other stuff. And then that pays for the content, which has always been free, so I can pass on for those people that have helped me. Then hopefully the people that come under that will do the same. Then it just kind of keeps going and going and going. And if they are, I'd be naive to sit here and say that there's not people that aren't doing that. There are, but there's way more that aren't. It's like I'm fucking screaming in a hurricane. There's way more they're just taking. Yeah, well, it's just, they're not, maybe taking, but I don't even know if they see it as that. Because it's, if, let's say, for my example, let's say the content's always been free. They see no value in it. Maybe that was a fucking business mistake. Because free is going to show no value, even though the programs that we may have on our site are way better than the fucking toilet paper programs that people are charging for, And, but it is what it is, and that's one of those, it's just, you get me on that rant now, basically the same thing where you got to stop, remind yourself, here's what's important, what's going on. The people who are passing on still are. And I don't know if, here's the question with that, with what you're saying. I don't know if those people that you're talking about are going to be significant outside of their own numbers
when they leave the sport in 2 or 3 years, because I don't think they're going to last as long as the other people do.
Fizzlers.
Yes. When they leave, what significance outside of being maybe they're ranked in the top 100 now? 10 years from now, it's going to be in the thousands. Nobody's going to scroll to see their name.
Yeah.
Nobody scrolls to see anybody's name on open powerlifting. Doesn't happen, right? So so what significance have they made outside of that? You know, hell, in 3 years, their Instagram will have fucking completely different shit on it, or they'll just abandon it and make another one. You know, so does it matter? You know, and I don't follow, you know, it enough, you know, anymore, you know, to be able to know if there are ones that are actually significant, not significant.
Right.
You know,
I think there's too many.
Yeah.
Emerging too. It's hard to follow.
It is
at that kind of rate.
It is, and it's social media is a blessing and a curse. If they're on, I'm just trying to put myself in their position if I was still competing at that time. Like well, Louis wouldn't have let us do any of this shit anyhow, but you know, what would I have done? You know, if I could find a way to not have to bounce, you know, and work the shitty jobs that I was working,
right,
or work less to be able to pay for the sport that I love to do, would I have done it? Probably. You know, and what content would I would have had to post? All you do is train.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is she gonna post?
Yeah, it's probably, and like, honestly, I'm not trying to age you or anything.
Yeah.
But like, it's got to be baffling for you to look at that shit and you're like, here's a bunch of motherfuckers who, well, number one, aren't that great, getting paid to do what you were like fucking breaking your back to do.
It's not. I don't see it as that. I don't see that as a bad thing, because why else did I break my back if it didn't create opportunities down the line?
I mean, and that is a good way to look at it.
You know, and it's up for your generation and the generations coming up to be able to fix those fucked up cracks. The federation issues, they're always going to be the federation issues.
Yeah.
They're always going to be there, right? But if you end up being in this position to where you can fix those things and make it better, then that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Things aren't supposed to get worse. You know, I'm sure if we look at the issues, if we knew all the issues that were going on, I can tell you some of the issues that were going on years ago with some of the feds, you know, compared to the issues now. There's still issues, but they're not the same issues. And that's got to be a good thing. You know, if the lifters are able to actually monetize and to be able to find some way to be compensated for what they're doing, then that's a good thing. If it's fucked up on how they do it, it's up, you know. I have faith it will work its way out. You know, will it work its way out to where they're going to be a professional sport? I don't know about that. You know, but will it work its way out to where it's going to be better than it is now? I have faith that it will be.
I heard a phrase the other day, to always leave the wood pile one log taller than when you found it.
Yeah.
And I think that's sincerely what a lot of people are trying to do.
Yeah.
And would like to see done. But I think it's also up to, you know, just like your generation taught the next and that taught mine, like it's up to us to reinforce those values to that new generation to make sure that they continue to do that as well.
The important ones, you know, and a lot of it is reinforcing it with our own generations as well. You don't think I've had to have conversations with people in my generation that don't like anything about what they see?
Yeah, and they're like, dude, help me fix this.
Well, not just that. It's like, dude, what would you have done if you were there now? Don't fucking tell me for a minute you wouldn't be doing a lot of the same shit that they are.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and tell me that bullshit. You were selling test out of the back of the fucking van. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, don't even go there. And because it's a false reality on what they're kind of looking at it too. So it's, you know, there is bad in all of it, but I'd rather try to see the good. At least tell myself that.
Yeah.
You know, because there is a lot, and as these phases kind of blow through, it's easy to lose sight of what the good is. But once those phases blow through, and then there's the drama's always there, but it goes in phasing. So,
Is it harder for you as like a West Side member and like part of that kind of movement and crew to like I obviously we've talked about I know you're excited about growth, and no one can deny the exponential growth it's experienced. But like, is there any part of you that are like, knowing from where you're from with powerlifting, watching the new generation, and wish you could have done something maybe different to encourage it?
To encourage the new generation?
Yeah, like change, like maybe have done something that you think, if a bunch of guys with voices and who are really respected banded together and had done something, do you think it would have changed the outcome of where powerlifting's at today?
No. What I'm processing as you're asking that question was when Ross kind of started. I mean, it's kind of always been there, but really, really, really small. So the things that I'm processing as you say that is, I know what the total numbers were, as I said earlier, about 20,000. I also know that multi-ply lifting was making up about 3,000 of that. So I was keen enough to know that it was the minority, right? A lot of people in my generation don't know that. They think that multi-ply was the majority. Not even fucking close. Single ply by far. And it makes sense from business standpoints. You gotta, if you're in that industry and you're selling single ply, whatever you train with for the meet, is your meat suit becomes your next training suit. Then you get a new neat suit, then it's the next training suit. Multi-ply, you buy one and you don't ever need another one. They last fucking forever. Right. So from a business standpoint, if you're somebody that was selling gear through, that popular time, single ply, and it was when I was selling metal, it was impossible to penetrate that market. Fucking impossible, because it was so protected, because that's where all the revenue was being generated. Multi-ply was a gap. Like, yeah, fuck it, go ahead. Bigger companies weren't making shit on that. Nothing. Because they buy one pair of briefs, they don't buy another one, and then it gets handed down and moved through and all this other kind of stuff. So knowing that kind of gives me a different perspective on what you're talking about. When Raw started to become a little bit more popular, say Raw Unity, and there might have been like a New England thing and some other things that are a little bit before there was a lot of backlash against it. A lot of backlash. Like, fuck this, everywhere. I don't know how big a part I was of the backlash. It's kind of not in my personality to do that. But I'm not going to sit there and say that I probably didn't make a post or two about it being fucked up. But to be super vocal against it, I was never super vocal.
When you say fucked up, what do you mean?
As far as... And when I was saying fucked up, as far as like making posts degrading it.
Yeah, degrading Raw,
because
it's so weird to hear too, thinking about like,
it's the opposite.
Yeah, imagine all the shit posts now that like shit on gear.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. That's what it was. So it was like, fuck these guys. What are they gonna do? They ain't lifting real weight. Like, why in the fuck would you want to take this off and lift less? It's fucking stupid. All this, like, they're scared to lift fucking heavy weight. That's why they do this. They're fucking scared. So instead of squatting 800, they'd rather squat the 500 because they don't have the balls to put 800 on their back. Stuff like that, right? That was big. And some of this you may still be able to find on some of the older forums if you really wanted to go down a rabbit hole. So I don't think if that would have been any less, if that was less tame and say it was supportive, like, go guys, go. I don't think it would have made, I think it would have actually been worse. Or it would have made it not grow as hard. But now when you got these guys saying this, then you got a whole group of other guys, these outliers, saying, fuck you, I'm going to lift, but you're lifting, but I ain't wearing that shit. Right? So now they're motivated by fuck you.
More people to get stronger Raw.
Yeah. So you go back to Lily Bridges, Chad Smith, that generation. Like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'll lift the same thing that you are and not need that shit. So now they have this external motivation to be able to push that. And to be, this is now coming towards the end of my career, but being out as an outsider looking in to kind of watch this and say, man, wonder what's going to happen here. You're like, I don't know what's going on, but the business, one of them, there's a big cost of entry, because as gear got better and got multiply, the canvas and stuff like that, now you're dealing with a few $100s per suit.
Yeah.
So now you're dealing with the cost of entry at thousands of dollars just to be able to lift in a meet to the entry fee. And it's like, oh shit, when this starts getting more popular, then there's that, and that's a big factor. To say that doesn't factor in is very naive. And then CrossFit, I believe, started feeding, that raw powerlifting side, a lot, which that mentality-wise, I think. And this is just me going out on a limb here. I got nothing to prove all this kind of stuff. Kind of took it from one of the first articles I wrote in Powerlifting USA. I said that powerlifting was basically a bunch of athletes that were beyond their prime, and a bunch of athletes that weren't good enough to actually go to college to play football or whatever it's going to be, and misfits. That's all it is. Just a bunch of fucking misfits, right? That fit kind of in that demographic. It's how I saw it. And so now, so CrossFit comes, and now you got demographics coming in that kind of are not that, right? So now you got a group of misfits that pretty much weren't really like team athletes, individual athletes, which is kind of why they gravitate towards individual sport. And then CrossFit, which is a community. Like the boxes are a community. We train together. We do this. We do that. So that brings in a different type of perspective, personality type into the sport. And then to watch that and say, well, I wonder how this is going to work. Because now you're taking a bunch of people that I'm defining illy, right? I'm making generalizations. I'll take credit for that. But now you're taking a bunch of people that are like, let's just leave us the fuck alone. Like, we just want our monolift and our fucking shit and just leave us the fuck alone. We want to live in private, we want to live in private clubs, garages and shit like that. And then all these people like, no, we want to all train in this big fucking box and do this and all that. Now, how's that going to work when you put them all together? Will it work? Right? And then they start coming together, and it's a social experiment that I'm kind of looking at from the outside in. Like, how's this going to work? Are they going to be able to have meets where you're going to be able to take this strong personality type and mesh it with this one? Or will this strong personality type be in this one, and those be the ones that rise to the top? And I think we're still seeing this all play out, which is fucking fascinating to me, by the way.
No, I'm super glad. I'm really glad I asked that question, because I know a lot of the younger guys who like follow me and are like, I get a lot of questions. So like, why, you did raw for so long, why did you switch to gear? So like, I know some of those guys are going to tune into this podcast, and I love the conversation you just had, because I think a lot of them don't see that, a lot of them don't see that flip, and how, this is how it was at the time versus now. But literally, it's just like anything in history. It goes so far this way only to flip the other way. And once it gets so far this way, it's going to fucking flip back again.
A lot of these guys are still around. I should have asked Pete about it when he was out here. Pete Rubish kind of would have been kind of in that reign. Lillibred just ran to Lily Chad Smith. A lot of these people went through it, and were part of that. Granted, there were raw people before them. There were.
Right.
But that raw unity is kind of what, and then it just happened to coincide. I don't want to say there's a causation with, I believe CrossFit pushing a bunch of people into the sport. Now, what I don't know moving forward is that outsider looking in, that pipe isn't there anymore. The CrossFit dumping the powerlifters in. Right. So I don't follow the numbers close enough to know, have the total numbers stagnated, with powerlifting over the last few years. I don't want to say CrossFit's less popular. I just want to say it's probably not growing at the same rate that it was. So I don't know that for sure either. But it seems like that pipe coming in is not like it was.
Right.
It was like just flooding in. So now that valve shut off,
will it push more people our direction?
Well, now that the valve's shut off, will the people that are currently in it, because that becomes now a referral network, where will the people that are currently in it now bring in the people that they need to bring in to have a positive attrition rate? Right? Because people, we all know this, that people spin faster in and out of the sport than what any of us would like. And some of them just want to try their first meet, do a meet, and kind of go from there. But there's also a huge number of people, and this I cannot define, where when we cross-referenced open powerlifting with our customer database, we did about a decade worth, and it made up about 5% of our total revenue. All right, so that tells me that if my target market are people that put training as a top 3 priority, and they love squat, benching, deadlift, they love the power lift, there's a giant number of people that love to train the power lifts but won't compete or don't plan to compete.
Right.
But there are also potential competitors. You see what I'm saying? So that will come back to are the people that are in there now being positive enough influencers to bring the people in that will replace when they leave. Right? And you would hope that they would bring in more. Like you're bringing in more. Right? So if I look at you just as a case example, you're bringing in way more than your one when you decide to not.
Right.
Right? So that's, to me, I don't care if it's multiply, single ply, raw. I don't give a
powerlifting.
fuck.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. You know, that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's freaking awesome. Now, if it's just one person, they come in and then they leave and they don't fill their own spot, you know, then it's not a good thing.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's just, it's interesting. Like it's a social, I like to watch shit like this.
No, I'm really glad I asked you that question. I think that totally needed to be said.
Were there any, I'm looking through, I haven't even looked at our topic list.
Yeah, we gotta just win.
Yeah. Actually, I do want to talk about this one thing here. With your training, you use a lot of different variations of, I call it chaos training, but like your deficit, your deadlift, for example. Go into that a little bit. Like, how did you come across that and how do you program that?
So this is kind of actually when you and me took a bathroom break, I thought about this because I was still, when you asked me that question of like, you know, what part of lifting like still draws me in, right? And I was like, I couldn't really put my finger on it while you and me were here. You know, usually your best thoughts are always in the bathroom. So naturally I came to more of a conclusion when you and me stopped to go to the bathroom. And I think it's this sensation of training to be uncomfortable. I like that feeling. Right. So when you ask me like, you know, what do we do? Like when you're stepping up to the bar and stuff, it's that feeling, right? That void, that feeling. I love that rush of being super fucking uncomfortable. And whether that's uncomfortable now, it's, you know, physically as well. Like obviously gear is not very comfortable. So that only adds to it. And I love it. But like the idea of like that thrill of uncomfortability where you're like, this could hurt me. You know, this is going to take a lot out of me, but I'm going to do it. I like to train for that. Love that feeling. And I think when we talk about like stop being as competitive, I worry about that because some of those phases in that peak, getting ready for a meet, are some of the most uncomfortable memories I can conjure. You know what I mean? So I think you start to become afraid of losing those opportunities, right? Because you don't really just take those all the time willy-nilly. Yeah. Right? So it's back to like Ed said, you know, like how many max single lifts do you have in a lifetime, right? So you start thinking about those and you're like, well, fuck, like I don't want to miss out on this. Like that's my shit. That's what I train for. So that going to what we're talking about now is I love to train uncomfortable. So I started messing around with like variations as a raw lifter, and I'm going to continue them into obviously gear. One of my favorite things to do is called the gauntlet. So what I would do is before a meet, probably like, I mean, I would do it in hypertrophy training too, as like more of a max effort day, but it would be much more linearly structured because the variations wouldn't change weekly. They would just chip the weight. Okay. So what I would do is I would find a number. I would warm up to like a last warm up double. So like say my last warm up double for deadlift was 705. Okay. I would go up to 3 singles. Right, and they would all be a different variation of the same weight. So it'd be like 2 kilo jumps up, like 717, 718. So I would put that on the bar, right? The first round of the gauntlet would be like a 2 to 3 inch deficit pull at 717, right? Your next one would be a pause below the knee.
And the same day or the next week?
Same day.
Okay.
Back to back.
Okay.
Like not a cluster, but like, with 3 minutes, 4 minutes in between.
Okay. All right. Got it.
And then the third of the last single of the same weight at 717 would be beltless long hold.
Okay, so it's deficit, and then the second was what again?
Pause below the knee.
Pause below the knee. Okay, then long hold.
Yeah.
All right.
And that was actually how I ended up on Anthony's podcast.
How so?
He had seen videos of me doing this shit. It was
Okay.
like, bro, this shit's fucking crazy. Like, I want to have you on the podcast.
No, there's rest between, right?
Yeah, about 4 minutes.
Okay, so they're just, I get it. All right.
But my object was like, if I can pull this weight in 3 different uncomfortable positions, like I know I have that on lock for a meet.
And then how long does that progress?
Generally up until like, if I had to measure like a RPE scale, I would ship it till I got to probably like damn near a 10.
All right, so about how many weeks then?
Probably 4.
Okay, all right.
Probably ramp up for 4.
So about a block.
Yeah, about a block. Because then it would be time to about deload and then start like a normal peak if I didn't work that into that peak. But I always did better with having like a hypertrophy deadlift day where I would, you can run basic stuff like a 5x5 or like an 8x3. But then I always did way better with handling heavier weights singularly and working that form and pattern. And I knew that I would get stronger just position-wise if I could hold each of those throughout those hard variations. And that always seemed to work for me, even as a raw lifter. So I always had people like, why the fuck would you do this in a single session? And I was like, because in my mind, I knew if I could do that, like it was on lock on game day. Like there was just no excuse. Like I would, even my opener, like my last day of doing openers, I would take the opener through a gauntlet. Okay. And I just knew that was what's going to make it out of meat, right? And you got to think, if you do that 3 times and you've escalated that to, I think I was getting to the point where I was close. I think my max pull at the time was like 750 raw, and I was working to doing that gauntlet with like 733. So I was pretty fucking close. I was over second attempts. You know what I mean? I knew that third one was going to be a PR if I could hold on to it. Fortunately, I got small ass hands, and dropping shit on third attempts I'm pretty notorious for. Or mostly, if you can see, my hands look like dog shit right now, ripping pretty bad. But I just always loved that training aspect and coming up with ways that like would really challenge me through that same weight with just a harder variation. So like I remember one I had a lot of people talking about. They used to post me on before I was in gear. I've noticed if you're in gear, you don't get reposted to like the cool Instagrams as much because you just don't. So I used to be on King of the Lifts like all the fucking time, and there was ones of me pulling like, literally deficits where the bar was starting at like my fucking toes. Like it was like 4 or 5 inch deficit, like stupid shit. But just knowing that I had built enough endurance and like stability to be able to do that, like my body could handle it. And I really prided myself in that, and I really liked that aspect of training because like, it wasn't going for like your normal just maxing out. Like I was adding a variation to it that just progressively made it fucking harder.
Did you do anything like this with your squat or bench?
Squats, I got really into pausing. Okay. In wraps. So like a lot of people, obviously in wraps, you're relying on that rebound to get out of the hole. Yeah. But then pausing it, you're negating and taking away a lot of that away. So I knew if I could pause it, like it was fucking.
Was it the same gauntlet style to where maybe your first set was a normal set?
It was closer to that, but most of the time I would just work up in like doubles for pauses. So
okay.
I got to the point where, I was pausing like 7+ for reps, like pretty frequently on different bars, like Duffalo or, Texas squat and stuff like that. But then when I got hold of the transformer, I have shorter arms. So dude, not to harp on this, and if you don't have them, you don't have them. Yeah. Dude, I always would see videos of your SSB, but with the extended handles. And for the love of God, I've searched the fucking confines of the internet.
Oh, for the longer
to
ones?
find the
we used to
longer
sell them.
handles. Yeah, and I've looked, and I know you don't anymore, so I've looked everywhere. Because that was my favorite part about the Transformer. It wasn't the bar necessarily. It was like my short ass arms, I could hold it further away, and I loved it. So I've searched eBay, you name it. I've looked for them. I can't find them. So if anyone listening to this podcast has an SSB that they're getting rid of for the longer handles, or will just sell me the handles, count me in. I will buy them from you straight up, no questions asked. But I got to the point there where I could run the gauntlet on those. Like I was doing 700 variation. Now those I would usually spread out throughout the week, just because like you couldn't really switch bars in the middle of the set, obviously. But I always did that. And for bench progression, I was always working with basically a 5-4-3 every time I would hit a heavy bench session, and then the other day would be auxiliary using bands or chains. And I would usually work up high reps in that, doing sets of like 10 to 12. Yeah, maybe as low as like an 8. But with the heavy days, I would start and chip one of the 5s, the 4s, or the 3s. So it wasn't like I was trying to have a PR triple every week. I could PR the 5 and then chill for the 4 and the 3. Like hit something I've hit previously, so that the volume load was slightly higher, right? But like I wasn't necessarily having to like go all out for like a triple every time. And I had really good results with that. I was stuck in a bench rut I token benched 430 at 198 for like 2 fucking years. Like I knew 430 was going to go, and it was a safe bet, and I just kept total PRing through squat and dead. And so once I started that, it really started going up, and I got up to benching like 470 raw at 198.
So that was a big jump. When it took off. Yeah, when it took off, and I finally figured that out, it grew massively. Yeah. So do you think that was more the main day or the auxiliary day?
I think it was a combination of the two for sure. Because I was doing all the sets of like, if I did 3 ascending sets of like, a double banded micro bench, and I was like hitting a set of like 12, 10, 8, and then back down to a set of 12, like a pyramid. Yeah. Each set of those was pushing it to like a 9.5. Like it was damn close to failure. On those lighter days. And obviously with the micro bands, like, the bar weight, the plate weight wasn't crazy. But I really think that's what added to it, honestly. So, and I had trouble growing my bench for the longest time. I fucked up one of my rotator cuffs at RPS meet. You can literally watch the video. I got the lift still. I don't know how, but you can literally, like, if you imagine it, you can hear the click in the video. It's just going up, and then instead of like getting an up down motion, it goes back and forth, and you just watch it. And then I lock it, and then like the next week I couldn't even fucking bench the bar. Yeah.
How long did it take for that to start to feel normal again?
Like I worked back up to like my normal weight in probably like 7 months.
Oh shit. Okay, so what did you do immediately after?
I talked to Micah Moreno, and he had this program he had found called a STAR protocol. I forget who wrote it, man. I wish I knew the article off the top of my head. But it was about benching with like grade 1s to grade 2 strains. And it was, you literally benched like every fucking day. And it sounds like, for most of us, that sounds crazy. Like, how the fuck, why would you do that with an injury? But it was like the bar, and then it progressed to something else. But it was like flooding the area with blood. And between that and then rounds of like TB with BPC, dude, the recovery rate was insane. And I've run the same protocols with like hamstrings, adductors. Dude, it just works.
Okay.
But I think the first day is like maybe like a 2x20 with the bar.
Okay.
And then the next day is like maybe like a 3x12 with like the bar plus a 2.5. Like I'm talking like
I get it.
Tiny. It wasn't like the day 3 I was like banging out 135 for as many reps as possible. It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, it's just blood flow.
Yeah, it's just blood flow. But you know, and obviously it's going to hurt. Like, it hurts.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, it should, if you're doing it right, it should hurt maybe the first 4 or 5, but then it hurts a little less as you get in the set.
By like a week, day 6 or 7, I was like, okay, like I could noticeably tell the difference.
Yes, because when it doesn't not hurt, God, that's a terrible sentence right there. You know, if it doesn't not hurt, then you know it's the wrong thing that you're doing.
Right.
You know, and sometimes that you would just flip the movement.
Right.
Find
It's not
something else.
actually, excuse me, not actually activating the area you're looking to target.
Yeah. Were there any topics or questions that you want to talk about that I didn't bring up?
No, I think we had I was super stoked. Like, that was one of the like questions I didn't mean to ask you, the one about how you would change things. Then you went through the whole spiel we just got out of, and I'm so happy I asked that question, because I think so many people look up to you. Yeah. And like, I know, like I said, a lot of younger guys will watch the podcast because of like me. And there's so many people that need to hear that conversation. I
think that and it kind of resonates after you just said that. When I think of the history of the sport, I don't think of that, because to me that's like current. But to the newer guys, that is the history,
and that's
what
I mean by they need to hear that, and so many miss that. And as you and me discussed earlier, they're not going to read about it.
Yeah, I'm like, they need to know about Larry Pacifico, Mike Bridges, and that's so far back that they don't know that's. I'm glad you brought that up and acknowledged that, because this can be part of the conversation, that when I bring other people on, I can get them to talk about it, that we're more active in it.
Yeah.
You know, because I was kind of on my way out.
Firsthand.
Yeah, I can get a little bit deeper perspective, you know, on what it was more like in the trenches for that whole thing.
Right.
But it was interesting, because there was a lot of people that were like, "Fuck you guys." That was the interesting thing. And then a lot of people were rooting for them to fail. You're not going to last, you know, you're going to get hurt, you know, the same things they say now.
Yeah, the same thing they say now about gear. It's so wild. And like I said, so many people don't realize that.
Yeah. Man, it was great having you out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
4 hours.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me out here, man.
No, and I appreciate everything that you do. Following you, is Instagram the best way to go about following you?
Yeah, just at Papa Bear Rogers.
All right, where's the Papa Bear come from?
So it was actually from my kids at the high school. And of course now it's more of like not a joke, but like a lot of my friends give me shit for it now. But so when I first started, I was in the weight room of the high school way back before like we had the weight room. We got a weight room grant and redid the whole thing, but way back before, some of my other articles I wrote about, I'm like, you would get fucking tetanus in that place. Like, it was fucking, the bars it was bad. But so me and the boys had cleaned it up, and like, you know, once we got to training in there, a couple of other teachers had noticed it, that I had like a bunch of kids under my wing and stuff after school. And one of the teachers was like, "Damn, dude, you're like a regular Papa Bear." And then like one or two of the kids had heard him say that. And then they started calling me that. They're like, "Oh, Papa Bear," like Ed calling me that. And then just kind of took hold. And then like I think the next year, a bunch of them pitched in and got me, there's actually a camo belt over there. They all pitched in and got me like a custom Pioneer belt that says Papa Bear on the back of it.
Well, that's cool. Obviously it stuck, right?
Yeah, it stuck. And now I had no choice. I couldn't get rid of it. And then especially when they got me the belt, I was like, shit, well, this is forever now. So not changing that. There was only one instance where we almost changed it. We were talking about they were calling me Robot Legs Rogers. Yeah. Just because of all the fucking surgeries and stuff now. But
tell me about your charity real quick before we shut it down.
So I have a 501c3 that works for underprivileged children. So we provide food, clothing, sports equipment. We donate bars and stuff to like the football teams for weight training, things of that nature. Most of the work I'm doing right now is through the Seaford Food Pantry. One of the biggest hardships in our area right now is run out of food really, really quickly on the breaks, especially through summer. We have a food truck program during the summer as well, but mostly it's food, backpacks, school supplies, clothing. I raise the money through hand-drawn goods that I do, so I'm a graphic artist in my spare time. I hand-draw all the designs, scan them, upload them, sell them to all my followers, raise the money, and then we purchase giant Amazon food packages and stuff for all the kids and that kind of stuff. So that's it in a nutshell real quick. But It's pretty awesome, man. You get to watch, like, being in the hallway, you get to see kids walk around with, like, bear sweatshirts on and shit.
Yeah.
And, like, the principals and stuff are like, that's your shit, right? I'm like, yeah.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You may forget it from time to time, but I'll tell you right now in front of everybody, you are making a difference. So keep doing you.
I appreciate that, man.
All right,
Especially
guys.
coming from
yeah.
you.
All right, guys, we're done.